Because what students make a big mistake is that they look at the question once and you will not be in the same state of mind when you're sitting in the exam hall. It is like natural phenomena we are explaining. That is, these areas were generally remaining dry. Between 1991 and 2016, Chennai expanded by 80% in its area. Now forget about just this particular ordinary turtles. Think about how many other animals and organisms are looking forward to nest there.
What sets AIR2 and AIR3 apart in UPSC CSE 2024? They didn't wait to feel ready. They started smart with the GS Foundation course at Vision IS Delhi. Structured learning, focused current affairs, real mentorship, test feedback that actually helps you grow. This course isn't just about study hours. It's about direction, clarity, and the strategy toppers trust. Start strong. Start where toppers started.
UPSC preparation is not just about reading books or watching online lectures. It requires personal guidance, real discussions, and structured practice. This is where offline mentoring makes all the difference. Unlike online learning, where doubts often remain unresolved, offline mentoring offers direct interaction, real-time feedback, and an environment of discipline and competition. One-to-one sessions help students get tailored advice, strategy corrections, and focused improvement. Every aspirant has different strengths and weaknesses. Personal mentoring helps address them effectively. Ground discussions sharpen analytical thinking and help students develop a multi-dimensional perspective on issues crucial for prelims, mains, and interview. Elocution sessions help in personality development, clarity of thought, and confidence, essential for UPSC interviews. Test writing is the most crucial part of UPSC preparation. It helps in time management, structuring answers, and improving content quality. Offline mentoring is not just about teaching. It's about grooming future officers with the right guidance, discipline, and confidence. So if you are preparing for UPSC, make sure you have the right mentor by your side.
Yeah. So, am I audible? Everyone? Yeah, good. Welcome to Vision IS. So today you have an open session where we'll be discussing about the past 10 years disaster management papers, questions. So here we'll discuss all the questions, in detail, and also I have prepared one handout for that. So that will also be uploaded on your portal, that YouTube video, it will be uploaded there. I shall provide it, but it is little more in a detailed format. So I'm damn sure looking at the repetitive nature of the questions, that will help you to write a good answer, Like my notes, if I have to tell you, it will be like, I won't give you, if they're asking for 150 words, I won't give you 150 words, I actually give you little more, So I would probably choose to give little probably 250 words ka question. That is something we need to keep in mind. And I would give a note for 300, 350 words, Very simple, like you study these 350 words, you remember 250 words, If you study for 250 words, then you will not remember anything, So considering that, I have actually prepared a detailed notes, So to be very honest, it is around 70 pages. It's all the 20 questions from 2013 to 24. Okay, everything is there in it. Okay, so that will be shared with you. Okay, so today, like roughly 19 to 20 questions have come in UPSC so far till 2024. Okay, and most importantly here, what happens with respect to disaster management is it's a low-hanging fruit. Okay, it's clearly a low-hanging fruit, which with just an efforts for 3 days, okay, with good good knowledge in geography and environment, okay, and a sustained effort of only for 3 days, okay, that will be sufficient to score like very high marks in your disaster management questions. Okay, so like I hope you have covered your geography and environment, the basics at least you know it, right? So you'll be able to connect with this particular part very well. Okay, so now like let's sail through this. Paucity of time, I couldn't get the PPT, but I'll try to explain it in a better way. Okay, yeah. So now there was one question. Okay, I would want you to just 1 second. So yeah, flooding in urban areas is an emerging climate-induced disaster. Discuss the causes of this disaster. Mention the features of 2 such major floods in the last 2 decades in India. Describe the policies and frameworks in India that aim at tackling such floods. So basically, if you look at this particular question, always you need to understand first the keywords in the question, and second the tone of the question. Okay, so here very clearly they're asking you to actually write an elaborate answer on the keywords. Is that clear? So like for example, the first one that you need to identify in this question will be the causes for the urban floods. Okay, the first one will be basically so the first one is the causes for the urban floods, while the next one that you can see is they are asking you to quote any 2 major events of urban floods from past 2 decades. Okay, from past 2 decades, that is what they are asking you to do. Okay, so now there are 2 things that we have seen in the question. One is the causes for the urban floods, and the second one will be the 2 major events that is from the past 2 decades. Okay, so you have to choose. There are several events. You have to choose which is more in the case of like that intensity. Okay, or in the level of that disaster. You have to choose that and you have to present it. Okay, and apart from that, like this is easy. Everybody can do this. But next step, that is little bit you need to be aware of. Okay, so they're asking describe the policies and frameworks in India that aim at tackling such floods. Okay. So the demand, what you can see from that particular question that was asked last year, 2024 mains, is these 3 things. Okay, so any question when you can actually break to the demand like this, okay, break on to the actual demand of the question, then you have answered 50%. Is that clear? Because what students make a big mistake is that they look at the question once and you will not be in the same state of mind when you're sitting in the exam hall. Okay, you will be under pressure. Okay, so under that pressure, when you start writing what you have glanced or and grasped at the first instance, that is the part that you will answer. Okay, so that's why it is very important for you to take some highlighter or some pen that is of a different color, and you'll have a separate question paper. Usme aap highlight karna hai. Okay, highlight karo or like you start marking it 1, 2, 3 or A, B, C, whatever you're comfortable with. Okay, and while you're writing, okay, now there are 3 parts. Let us say it is 250 words. Okay, so if it is 250 words, then you need to appropriately divide it also. Okay, so you have to actually make sure that you segregate it accordingly and you will work on it like meanwhile, okay, matlab in writing the answers. So that is your task to do. Is that clear? So now, looking at this particular first question, let us start like, with answering of this question. Now, firstly, when the question is asking about urban floods, okay, how will you introduce the answer? Anybody? Let's make it more interactive. I don't want you to sit like just like a stalemate or all. Please, let's make it more interactive. Somebody, tell me, yeah. Right, okay. Yes, ma'am. Urbanization, but that becomes the core of the answer, right? Matlab, cause of the answer. I was asking, how do you introduce it? Data, okay, good, yes. I'll come to you. Okay. Okay, yes, ma'am. Huh. Hmm. Hmm. Now, those are causes, right? Yes, sir. Okay. That is again a problem, that challenge you are looking at. Okay, cause, yes. So, is this all? Chalo, let us look at this. Now, here is this document that you can see. Okay. So, you can see this document, it runs almost for like 70 pages. Okay. So, it is a detailed analysis that I will actually deal with. Okay. So, now, let us look at this. So, basically here, when you look at such questions, okay, any question for that matter, the best introduction, the best conclusion I will tell you, which you can universally follow for any topic, okay, except history, okay, is generally, even for history also you can use this. Generally you will start the question with either definition of the keyword that is asked, or you will go for origin of that particular topic. Okay, origin इसमें तो लिंक नहीं है. Okay, कुछ चीज़ें होता है उसमें तो आप लिंक कर सकते हैं origin को, ठीक है? So like some, for example, governance. Okay, if they ask you something related to governance, like for example disaster management का governance question आ गया, उसमें आप लिंक कर सकता है. When did India start proactive approach? Okay, so 2005 disaster NDMA act, उस समय से actually बहुत ज़्यादा changes हुआ है, like that origin you can start. Okay, or the third is data. So this will be called DOD method. Is that clear? This will be called the DOD method, where you can actually stick to any of this. Okay, coming to this particular question, what you can actually look at is basically you can either go for the definition or you can go for the data. Correct? Okay, but when you're quoting the data, if you can actually even quote the resource from where you are sourcing the data, that will give you an extra additional edge. Okay, is this clear? So that is something you need to look at. Okay, so now here, like what you can see is I have actually started with the definition. Okay, and yes, I told you about the conclusion also. I'll show you the conclusion. When I come to conclusion, please remind me. I'll tell you the standard conclusion I have given, but something more what you can do, I will suggest you there. Okay, now see, when you look at urban flooding, okay, urban flooding is more a repetitive, like phenomena in the recent past. Recently, a couple of days back also, like till day before yesterday, even Bangalore was facing it. Okay, even Bangalore was in the news because of the urban flooding. Okay, last year also Bangalore was in news. Last year Delhi was in news. Last year, like even you can see several, like even Mumbai was in news. Okay, in the past 5-10 years, if you see, Mumbai, Chennai, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Delhi, no city, even Chandigarh was actually affected. Okay, so what you can see is major of the urban areas are facing this flooding issues. Accepted? Correct? Okay, now when you look at this way, what exactly is urban flood? It is basically inundation of water, right? It is inundation of water. Why? See, always ask why, where, how, when and which. That will give you the introduction. Again ask the same things, that will give you the causes. Again ask the same things, that will give you the what do you say, consequences. Okay, so this is an easy method to write the answers when you do not know much about the topic. Okay, so now see, first thing, what is it? It is inundation of water in the urban areas. Now the second question comes, why is it happening? Why is it happening? Like several people told, like some of them mentioned that it is occurring because there is like bad drainage system. Okay, so there is actually sort of a bad drainage system. So that is something you can see. Why is the bad drainage system present now? It is clearly one aspect, that rapid urban sprawl. Is that clear? What exactly is urban sprawl? Urban sprawl refers to unprecedented, unplanned expansion of the urban areas. Is that clear? Unprecedented and unplanned expansion of urban areas. Now when this happens, can I say, like initially when the city was formed, right? Initially when the city was like being built, during that time, whatever the drainage system capacity was there, even today it is surviving with the same but greater population. Correct? Like for example, like you can take several cities in India. This is the same reason that they could not substantially, proportionately expand the facilities in the city with the increasing population. So we are facing several problems today. Okay, like for example, you speak about traffic congestion in Bangalore, same reason. Okay, you speak about the urban flooding in entire cities of India or several cities of the world, same problem. Is that clear? I'll give you certain examples later. Is this clear? Samajh mein aaya? So, like basically here, what you can see is generally when these areas, it is like natural phenomena we are explaining. That is, these areas were generally remaining dry, but now they are receiving heavy rainfall, both due to natural and the anthropogenic aspects. Anthropogenic means human induced. Okay, so now, so basically urban floods refers to a climate induced disaster where both natural and anthropogenic causes are equally like giving the reason for inundation of water in the urban areas, which is exaggerated by the limited capacity of the drainage system. Samajh mein aaya? Clear with this? Can we write this in 30 words? Yes or no? For introduction, that's it. Is this clear? So now next. Now the second part, okay, we'll look at this. So flooding in urban areas is, okay, chalo, discuss the causes of this disaster. So this is something we need to answer. Features of two such major floods in the last 2 decades in India. This will be second part, and describe the policies and frameworks in India that aim at tackling such floods. Correct? So now let us look at the first aspect, the causes of urban floods. Okay. So now when you look at the causes of urban floods, okay, there are several causes which is a combination of natural as well as anthropogenic. Okay, natural as in naturally it occurs that way. Okay, so naturally India gets concentrated rainfall only in 4 months of the year. Okay, but what is the anthropogenic factor? Congestion of the drain system or limited drain system. Okay, something like this. We'll look into each of it. See, firstly, we can look at the causes together because they're not asking separately. We can look at it together, or later on we can segregate it also. Okay, firstly, the rainfall intensity, right? The amount of rainfall and the intensity of rainfall is changed. Correct? Okay, like if you look at this, basically here there are certain extreme weather events that is basically the result of what? Change in climate. Correct? It is basically the result in change in climate. So what you can see is like there is something called as short burst or basically the cloud burst. Short burst क्या होता है? इतना सा duration, very less duration and very heavy rainfall. Okay, see globally there is no defined, like there is no global consensus on the definition of cloud burst. Okay, but there is one question regarding the cloud burst. There I will tell you what we follow. Okay, matlab in India what we follow, that I'll tell you there. Okay, so basically you can see here there is like heavy rainfall and these are short burst. Okay, these are basically the cloud burst and the short burst. Okay, next, apart from this, now this heavy rainfall cannot be handled by the cities because of its limited drainage capacity. Is this clear? And second of all, Now, why is heavy rainfall happening now and not before? Again, when we go to the root cause, it is the urban heat island concept. Okay, can I say the cities are relatively warmer than the surrounding areas? Right? When the cities are relatively warmer than the surrounding areas, then very clearly you will see that there is greater amount of heat trap, low pressure, sudden rising of the winds, and that will cool down, making the cumulonimbus clouds and resulting in torrential downpour. Accepted? Okay. So this is what you will see with respect to the climate change related rainfall as an aspect. Okay. Next, the second one, unplanned and rapid urbanization. Now, I told you there is an urban sprawl. Okay. And when you look at this unplanned and rapid urbanization, the first biggest drawback that you can see is clearly the impervious surfaces. Okay, like the concrete roads. The concrete roads will not allow the rainwater to percolate down. Correct? When it does not percolate down, yes, of course, with respect to this question, we will not be looking at the point that there is no groundwater, but we will look at that point that there is greater surface volume. Okay, there is greater volume of surface water. Right? Accepted? So instead of percolating down, it is on the surface, and when the infrastructure is not having the capacity to drain out, there is greater amount of rainfall and there is impervious roads and all these infrastructure, then where will the water be? Stagnated. Correct? Got it? Clear? So this is what you will see with respect to the impervious surfaces. Okay. Now, on the other hand, you can look at the second one. Now, you can see every city in India is actually encroaching the natural drains. What is it? Wetlands, lakes, river beds, all these things. Right? Now, these were the natural sponges which used to actually sequestrate the excess rainwater. Okay. Let me give you a simple example. Around 100 years back, okay, around 100 to 150 years back, the city of Bangalore had more than 200 lakes. What you see as an area today, the city of Bangalore had more than 200 lakes. But today, you will not find more than 50 or more than 20 well-maintained lakes. Is that clear? You will not find more than 20 well-maintained lakes. Now you tell me, where did this go? This actually is encroached. Why? Population outburst. Okay, everybody wants a home and the city has to accommodate so many people. So, of course, they will have to expand. When they are expanding, then of course they will go for encroachment of the lakes. And this is the government's responsibility to regulate it and prohibit it. Not regulate but prohibit it. Correct? Is this clear? So, the second one is encroachment of the natural drainage systems. Okay. So, this is another aspect. Next, apart from this, can I say when there are trees, okay. So, chalo, let me ask you this. How many of you actually saw a green patch from your room when you are coming here? Green patch as in painted nahi pooch raha hu main. ठीक है? Yeah. So, tell me how many of you actually saw a bunch of trees at least? Okay. Where? That's a park. Okay. Otherwise, one or two? Footpath? Okay, good, fine. I'll ask you the question now. Generally, now when there is a tree, okay, if you actually cover it, was it actually covered well till the trunk of the tree with the, the pavement? Okay, so that has come as a recent rule. Okay, many of the municipal corporations and the local governments has imbibed this particular law and they have enacted this saying that any tree that is there along the footpath or the pavements should have 6 by 6 space. Okay, what will happen otherwise? It will actually sort of see roots respire. Correct? It will choke them. They will die. Okay, but forget about this. This is not actually our concern. But I'll tell you, 6 by 6 if you don't live, then complete it is impervious layer now again. where will the water go? Okay, now if you look at the degree, or like, you know, if you look at the degree of the green spaces we have is relatively very less. Okay, so basically here the loss of green spaces is also a bigger reason that is contributing to the urban flooding. Is that clear? Like, for example, you can see that if there are sufficient amount of trees, then they can actually make space through its porous soil to actually percolate the water down. Okay, if for example there are no trees, then it is the concrete layer, of course. Correct? Yes or no? Okay, so these are the points that you can write with unplanned urbanization and rapid urbanization. Is this clear? Able to understand? Am I too fast? Okay, chalo. Next. So apart from this, let me tell you about the inadequate and outdated drainage infrastructure. Okay, so when you look at this, there is, of course, which I have already told you, insufficient capacity. Okay, firstly, insufficient capacity, and second of all, what you can see is, despite insufficient capacity, there is no periodic maintenance. Matlab, like for example, like you can see that we are all so much like, how do you call it, like ill-disciplined with respect to the sewage disposal. Correct? So we throw it everywhere, anywhere, right? For example, like many of the students, like they come to the class, they get their coffee cups, they get their chips packet, everything, and they leave it here and go. Yes or no? Right? So the same way, like I have seen it, so that's why I'm telling you. Okay, so that's the same thing when we look at, the same thing is seen in the public places. Okay, now imagine the quantity of plastic waste. Where will it go? Into the stormwater drains. When it goes there, will it not choke the flow of the water? It will clog it. Now, first of all, it is limited capacity, and second of all, there is clogging. Abhi batao kya hoga? And second thing, you know, this construction sector's debris is also one of the responsible reason for the clogging of the stormwater drains. Is that clear? So, like basically you can see that solid waste, silt, construction debris, and several other such things are the reasons why you will not see a healthy functional stormwater drains in cities. Okay, abhi batao, if it is clogged, can the water flow? No, it will result in flooding. Okay, not just having smaller capacity, but also having not maintained that smaller capacity is also a drawback. Is that clear, everyone? Okay, next, apart from this, now you can also see that there is also a, yes. नहीं, see, outdated drainage system का mention ये है, like we have not upgraded with the increasing population, मतलब upgradation in the capacity. That's what it means. हाँ, yes, मतलब large size करना है, नहीं तो, or else, like for example, you can also have multiple stormwater drains. Okay, so like for example, I'll give you one classic case study. Okay, recently it was in news. There is a place called Davangere. Okay, there's a place called Davangere that is in Karnataka. Okay, this place is actually a dry place, but it used to get, like, you know, sort of this cloudburst situations or extreme, like, you know, sort of rainfall. So it used to result in like frequent flooding in the city. Okay, and what they did was, it was a well, I mean, you can actually use this example very well in your exam. So like what they did was, the local people, the local communities came together, persuaded the government, and they made sure that actively with the smart city mission, okay, planning, along with those authorities, they happened to identify the zones where there is urban flooding very common within the city, and from that particular spots, they happened to draw like very streamlined channel, okay, very much streamlined channel to actually sort of like, you know, get rid of this heavy water during the rainfall through stormwater drains. Okay, so that was an example for upgradation. Okay, matlab it is not that this city did not have, correct? But what is the difference? That they upgraded, they identified the critical areas and they upgraded according to the necessity of that particular areas. Okay. इतना technicalities तो नहीं देखा है, but I guess probably we are using the channels like canal जैसा होता है ना, like हाँ नहीं नहीं ऐसा नहीं है, ऐसा नहीं है. Okay, it's just sort of like let off, that's it. Okay, it's just a let off. Okay, yeah. Okay, so yeah, is this clear, everyone? Yeah. See, very simple. If there is a channel that is flowing, okay, if I put some sand and like all those material, the construction debris, then will it not actually sort of increase the it becomes shallow like channels, right? When it becomes shallow channels, then of course when the volume is greater, overflow ho jayega. Okay, yeah. Okay, is this clear? Next, apart from this, you can also see like there is several cases, like for example the Chennai city. Okay, Chennai city happened to face the particular flooding because of uncontrolled water release from the dam. Okay, see what happens sometimes, like when the dams are constructed with a limited capacity, okay, and when there is excessive rainfall and it comes up to that particular capacity, then you are supposed to leave the water, and the sudden release of the water, okay, the sudden release of the water, unplanned released and uninformed releases will actually trouble the downstreams. Okay, and if there are cities in the downstream, then of course you can see that these cities will be affected. Is this clear? Samajh mein aaya? Okay, so this is something. Apart from this, you must have studied about the tropical cyclones, correct? So in that, at the center, you will have some, near the eye, you have an bulged portion of water called as storm surges. Okay, these when they hit the coastal land, they inundate the salt water into the coastal areas. Now we have several cities along the coastal areas, Mumbai, right, or Mangalore, Kochi and Chennai, or like you can see Visakhapatnam. Okay, West Bengal mein bahut zyada cities bhi hai, Kolkata bhi aata hai. Okay, like this. When you look at these cities, when there is itna zyada storm surge inundating along with high speed velocity or high velocity winds of the tropical cyclones, can I say that will actually inundate a lot of the marine water into the coastal area, not just spoiling the groundwater, not just spoiling the agricultural lands, but stagnating the water for a prolonged duration and resulting in flooding. Accepted? Correct? Okay, so this is something that you can see along the like coastal areas. Is this clear? Samajh mein aaya? Did you get the reasons? Okay. Next. Now, I guess you have got sufficiently like 5 to 10 reasons to write. Okay. Now, next one. So the next one that we'll be looking at is the second part. Features of two major such floods in the last 2 decades. We'll not limit to two major okay, we'll look into a couple of floods. Okay, I'll give you 2 major floods here. One, the Mumbai floods that happened in July 2005. Okay, so what you can see with respect to this floods is basically, you can see on a single day, July 26, 2005, okay, what Mumbai received was 944 mm of rainfall on a single day. Is that clear? Just one day it received 944 mm of rainfall. Even today, matlab 20 years later, it is the wettest day for Mumbai. It is the record wettest day for Mumbai. Okay, now if you look at this here, what you can see is the entire Mumbai city drainage system, okay, is a colonial design. Okay, matlab now let us take it in that manner. I am not saying it is very efficient. I am actually saying that Mumbai city drain system is very old, dating back to 20th century. Okay, its capacity is just 25 mm per hour. अभी बताओ इतना ज़्यादा पानी इतना कम कैपेसिटी में कैसा बाहर चलेगा? Right? You got the question? So, how it resulted in urban floods? You got it? Yes. So, now, like what happens is not just this. The flood gates that needs to be actually opening into the sea, they were not maintained. Okay? They were not actually maintained. So, like what you can see is like also during the same time, okay, during the same time, there the coastal city experienced high tides. ओके एक तो है बारिश की वजह से 944 mm, दूसरा है हाई टाइड्स की वजह से इनंडेशन ऑफ वाटर. नाउ यू टेल मी, विल द एक्चुअली द अमाउंट ऑफ वाटर थ्रू द रेनफॉल बी एबल टू गो ऑन टू द सी? नो. समझ में आया हाउ डेडली इट इज? ओके, नाउ so this is something you can actually look at that place. And moreover, the urban planning happened to actually lack very badly. This is not just for Mumbai, for every city in India. Okay, where you can see that uncontrolled and unplanned development, especially in the northern suburbs. Okay, northern suburbs had resulted in destruction of the mangrove ecosystem. Okay, now can I say mangrove ecosystem presence could have at least stopped the high tide, right? Controlled and checked the high tide. Okay, that ways we had a chance for this water to go out. Now you tell me, in the name of development, in the name of urbanization, did we do the right thing? No. Okay, so this is the drawback there. Okay, and moreover, you can also see that there was as a result, what you can see over there was complete blackout. Okay, as in complete economic activities were stopped. Entire Mumbai city, the economic capital of India, came to halt. Is that clear? The entire economic capital of India came to halt. Okay, so this is what happened. And also, not just this, several, maybe not much of the fatalities were seen, but several people were actually sort of infected with a disease called leptospirosis. Okay, it is called leptospirosis. Okay, this is a bacterial disease. Okay, this is actually a bacterial disease transmitted by the rodents and the street dogs. Okay, so this was actually like spread very much virally. I mean to say very much strongly. Okay, so that is something you could see. Next, the second example is Chennai floods. Okay, Chennai floods, November, December 2015. Yes, sir. The demand is basically why it happened, causes and consequences. That's it. That's what we are focusing on. Okay, yeah. So next, मतलब इस question का ये है, you have to generally speak about the causes firstly. Secondly, give the examples. In that examples, tell what is that degree of what do you call that disaster that particular city happened to witness, and why it witnessed, and what was the consequences of it. That's it. Okay, that is what you have to write. Yes, you can, but generally people don't remember, so it is better if you can. But what you have to look into is, when you are mentioning data, it should be at least near same. Okay, it should not go wrong, it should be near same. Okay, yeah. So next, apart from that, the next one is Chennai floods, November, December 2015. Okay, so here there was strong El Nino event during that time. Okay, there was strong El Nino event, and the annual retreating monsoon, okay, resulted in very deadly rainfall in that particular region, counting almost 1200 mm. Okay, so what you can see is, like, almost in one single day, there is a region in Chennai called Tamram. Okay, that place received almost 490 mm. Only one location in Chennai received 490 mm. Is that clear? So, like on December 1st, 2015, Tamram received 490 mm. Okay. Next, apart from this, Comptroller and Auditor General CAG happened to publish a report in which they said Chennai urban floods is a man-made disaster. Okay, they clearly mentioned it as a man-made disaster. Now we need to understand why. First thing, unchecked rapid urban urban expansion. Between 1991 and 2016, Chennai expanded by 80% in its area. Okay, so imagine just in 15 years, okay, sorry, 25 years, 80% expansion is not a small thing. Okay, and second one, they said, the report said, majority of the natural drains, that is the wetlands, the lakes, and even the stormwater drains were actually encroached. Okay, all of them were encroached. Okay, so now of course where will the water have to go? Okay, so apart from this, you can also see that several times there had been not taken care of desilting the stormwater drains. Okay, so this is also one another major reason. And further, along with this, there is a particular dam in this region, a reservoir. Okay, I'm sorry if I am not pronouncing it right. It is Chembarambakam. Okay, it is called Chembarambakam. All these are written in your notes, don't worry. Okay, it's called Chembarambakam reservoir. Okay, so this reservoir was full. Now what will they do? If they don't release it, it will burst open. Okay, so like what you could see is that was like, that reached the full capacity and that was released into the Adyar river. Okay, Adyar river, and that happened to inundate the low-lying downstream. Is that clear? And further, this almost resulted in 500 deaths. Okay, this almost resulted in 500 deaths, and also several thousands of people were like displaced. Economic damages were seen in the form of like billions of dollars. Is that clear? In the form of billions of dollars, this was seen. Next, further, you can also see that here, like this particular Chennai floods was like the character of, or the topographical character of this region was as such that historically they had been seeing the landfills in the lakes and ponds. Okay, historically they have seen, it's not today, but historically they have been witnessing that all the lakes and ponds were subjected to landfills. Is that clear? So this way these causes exaggerated and resulted in a deadly disaster for Chennai city. Is that clear? Okay, so this is something you can write. Okay, see, whenever you are writing an answer, make sure you give examples from across the country. Okay, preferably you give examples from across the country. Do not concentrate it to one city or one place or one region. Is this clear? Okay, so yeah, now we'll come to the third part, the policies and frameworks in India that aim to tackle the urban floods. Okay, see, first you need to write about the National Disaster Management Act 2005 and the NDMA guidelines. Okay, so here, like what you can say is basically the NDMA Act 2005 has established the National Disaster Management Authority and State Disaster Management Authority. Okay, so these both will make the comprehensive plans and implement regarding the disaster management. Okay, so the center gives the guidelines, plans, and this will look into, the state will look into implementation of it through the DDMS, matlab District Disaster Management Authorities. Okay, now if you look at this, here they made the National Disaster Management Guidelines for urban flooding in 2010. Okay, so National Disaster Management Guidelines for urban flooding, that is in 2010. So what they did was they actually issued these guidelines. Okay, matlab NDMA made the guidelines. Always remember, NDMA makes the guidelines, not SDMA, not DDMA. Okay, so now NDMA made the guidelines and this was given as a framework for all the states and local bodies. Okay, next, apart from that, what was included in it? Number one, regarding early warning systems. Okay, so it said we need to be like equipped with well, like sophisticated like technology that can give you an early warning regarding the possible disaster, okay, or possible hazard, okay. So basically the forecasting models, okay, or like for example like rain gauge or humidity assessment parameters, okay. So these things should actually be at the place to identify the or to sort of look into the possible hazard in the near future. Is that clear? Is that clear? Okay. So next, apart from that, proper drainage planning. You know the cause already. So proper drainage planning is the solution. Okay. And apart from that, it says risk assessment and vulnerability mapping. I gave you an example of Davangere city, right? So what did they do? Within the city, they identified the high vulnerable zones, and from there they made like stormwater drains so that those areas will not be disrupted despite there is strong rainfall. Correct? So that is what even NDMA is saying. Is that clear? Next, apart from that, capacity building. Like for example, when we look at capacity building, it is the government, it is the individual, it is the private sector, it is the NGOs, all of them should be well equipped with the resources that is required for provision of relief, rescue, and also to mitigate the disaster. Is that clear? So pre and post. Samajh mein aaya? Okay. So this will be something that you need to look at with respect to the NDMA guidelines. Always you need to quote the NDMA guidelines. Okay. That gives more value for your answer. Okay. Next. So the next second important policy or a scheme is, have you heard of Amrut? Amrut suna hai? Yeah, Amrut actually stands for Atal Mission for Rejuvenation and Urban Transformation. Amrut 1 as well as 2.0, both of them are there. Okay, in Amrut 1, see basically this Amrut program is under the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Okay, so what you can see is Amrut 1 happened to look forward to improve the basic infrastructure, okay, where it said the stormwater drainage and rainwater harvesting are the two important areas one need to look at. Is that clear? And secondly, Amrut 2.0 happened to make that the stormwater drains, and okay, they did not much focus on the stormwater drains because on the 1.1 only they were, I mean in the first phase only they were looking at it, and but still despite limited focus on it, they focused much on the provisions of rainwater harvesting. Is that clear? What is rainwater harvesting? Basically you are making such technology or such methodology where you will actually collect the rainwater and directly put it into the ground. Correct? So like you'll put it into your sump, or from there it is also channelized into the groundwater, any which ways it is. Okay, so that is something that you will see. Apart from this, the next important scheme is Smart City Mission. Okay, so according to Smart City Mission, what you can see is it is looking at urban development and infrastructure development, so in a resilient manner. Okay, so that is also bringing something related to drainage management and also water management systems. Is this clear? Next, apart from this, you can see Jal Shakti Abhiyan. Jal Shakti Abhiyan actually looks at rainwater harvesting. Okay, this is under the Ministry of Jal Shakti. It looks into rainwater harvesting and also artificial recharge structures and like watershed management, intensive afforestation. Okay, all these will actually increase the percolation of water. Is that clear? Into the ground. So apart from this, you can see Amrit Sarovar mission. It aims to develop and rejuvenate almost 75 water bodies in the country, in every district in the country. Okay, when you rejuvenate and actually bring back the life of the water bodies, like 75 water bodies in a district, that is more than sufficient to actually reduce your vulnerability, right? Okay, apart from this, then you have something called Model Building Bylaws 2016. Okay, this Model Building Bylaws says that like any particular plot which is 100 square meters or more should mandatorily have rainwater harvesting. Is that clear? Should mandatorily have rainwater harvesting. And apart from this, there is national water policy, which says there should be the scientific and community based conservation of the water bodies. Okay, when we go for scientific and community based conservation of the water bodies, we are actually restoring the degraded water bodies and also maintaining the health of the water bodies, which acts like a natural drain for the rainwater. Is that clear? Okay, and further you can also see there is flood management and border area program. This is actually not very much directly related to the urban flooding. Okay, but what it does is it tends to like address the river and coastal flooding. Okay, so what happens is this is very much helpful if you can write it with respect to the cities that is on the river banks or along the coastal areas. Okay, what they do is like construction of the embankments, or like for example flood management steps, like for example drainage improvement, okay, afforestation. If they are doing these things, then that will actually amount to like the efforts taken to redress the urban flooding also. Is this clear? Okay, so these are the important things that you can actually write. Okay, and to conclude, I will tell you, I told you when we go to conclusion, I'll tell you how to do it. You will always use sustainable development goals. Okay, you'll always use sustainable development goals. Okay, make use of a particular sustainable development goal that can actually speak with respect to disaster. There are several of them. Okay, so you better find it. I am giving you this as a task for you, at least you can do it. Okay, is this clear? Yeah. Yes, yes. Life below water, rather than going with just the life below water or something like that, there are related to sustainable urban areas and all these. Okay, so you can look into those. Yeah. Like you can actually use, but I would not suggest you to use multiple of them. It's better. Infrastructure development के बारे में भी देख सकते हैं, उसमें clauses भी है, resilient infrastructure that you can mention. Okay, yeah. Yes, yes, of course, embankments, check dams, ये सब कुछ है. But they're not asking for that. Okay, you can discuss them because I will discuss them somewhere later. But the thing is, you should look into the question. Almost they're asking in that tone only. Okay, yeah. How do you do this? So you can see all those that I have discussed, everything is there in this. Okay, so this will be given to you. You can actually follow. Even the examples are also given here in detail. Whatever I have spoken, everything is there in this. Okay, so all those like 7 to 8 programs and everything is there. Next, coming to the second question. Now let us look at this. What is disaster resilience? How is it determined? Okay, there are 2 questions already. Describe various elements of resilience framework. Also mention global targets of Sendai framework of disaster risk reduction. So in each question you have like 3-4 questions. Okay, so you need to be aware of this. Okay, so now I hope you know about, are your disaster management classes done? Okay, few of them. Okay, fine. Any which ways, chalo. See, when we say disaster resilience, okay, when we say disaster resilience, it refers to the capabilities of, it can be the community, it can be the system, it can be some building, or like it can be some society, how they can actually fight the hazard or how they can stand the hazard. Okay, that is resilience. Okay, so basically like it can be how you will resist, how you will absorb, how you will accommodate, or how you will actually transform, adapt, and that is what the definition says. Is that clear? In simple words, as a community, as a society, as a particular system, how well are you equipped with the abilities to like stand against the hazard. Okay, matlab standing against the hazard means reducing or mitigating the consequences. Okay, reducing or mitigating the consequences. Now, when you look at this here, like basically it also includes several other parameters. Like for example, how you bounce back, how you actually bounce back after the disaster. If your community is very highly disaster resilient, then you can see that you can bounce back very strongly, okay, and very quickly. If it is weaker in resilience, then you cannot actually bounce back strongly, okay, and the impact can be seen for prolonged time period. That is what it means, okay. So here how you can bounce back is one thing, and along with that building back better is another thing. Like for example, after an earthquake, okay, let us say the Nepal earthquake, Gorkha earthquake, okay, 2016 I hope, okay. After that earthquake, like how long did Nepal take to come back to normalcy? Now, if the same magnitude earthquake occurring in Japan, how long will they take to come back to normalcy? Samajh mein aaya? Who is well equipped? Who is actually more resilient? Yes. Okay, that is how you need to look at this. Okay. Now, when we say disaster resilience, you have to determine the disaster resilience. Okay. Before that, then you need to know what is actually the things that are part of the disaster resilience. Okay. Firstly, your ability to anticipate the hazard. Okay. Your ability to anticipate the hazard is the first thing. Okay. And second thing, once you can you have that ability to anticipate the hazard, then what is the amount of risk that can come from that hazard? That is another level of anticipation. Okay. Now, secondly is the preparedness. Okay. When we look at the preparedness, okay, when we actually look at the preparedness, here we are looking at the capacity building or capacity that particular community has against the hazard. Okay. Next, the third thing is like, you know, the third thing is basically how able are you at the immediate instance to face the disaster. Okay, that will be called as resistance or absorption. Is that clear? That will be called as basically resistance or absorption. Okay. Is this clear? Next, apart from this, there is one more thing that is called as recovery. Matlab, how fast you can recover back to the normalcy and bring back the lost livelihoods or affected livelihoods. And apart from that, you can also see transformation. Matlab, like for example, the changes that is like, how quickly you can adapt and change to reduce the vulnerability. Okay, so these are the macro factors. Now, if you look at by considering these macro factors, if you look at how is the disaster resilience determined, okay, you can see the first one is risk assessment and vulnerability mapping. Okay, here you need to identify the hazard, you need to identify the zones where exactly the hazard is more like making that place more vulnerable. Okay, and like you have to make an exposure assessment, like people, like which category of people will be actually more affected, as in old age, women, children, okay, like this. Or is it like the infrastructure, which like old infrastructure will be more affected? So that is part of the assessment. And also like further you can actually take a step in the assessment of vulnerability regarding like the physical vulnerability kitna ho sakta hai, social vulnerability kitna ho sakta hai, or like economic vulnerability to what extent. Okay, so all these things can be environmental vulnerability, like this, all these things like you can analyze. So, and then make the maps that will help for further steps. Okay, so these maps are called the risk assessment. This stage is called risk assessment and vulnerability mapping. Is this clear? Okay, next, apart from that, there is the next one, capacity assessment. Okay, that is also part of this only. Okay, how it is determined, that is also part of this only. Okay, now what you can see in capacity assessment is like you are evaluating your strength. Is that clear? You are basically evaluating your strength and looking at the resources that you have to fight back. Is that clear? So here, looking at that part, there are several aspects in terms of capacity assessment. First one, it can be the physical or built capacity. Iska meaning ye hai, what is the quality of infrastructure in the area? Is that clear? And secondly, you have economic capacity. Okay, like in the economic capacity, it will be like, what is the access to financial resources? How much is the access to financial resources? Or like how much of the population is well covered with insurance? How much of the infrastructure is well covered with insurance? Okay, or you can also see what is the economic stability of that region. Okay, so these things will actually add to the economic capacity. And third thing is the social capacity. Matlab, like here, there is one factor, social cohesion. Okay, why social cohesion? Because when the society is together, the access to resources is easier. If the society is stratified, then access to the vulnerable layers is very difficult. Samajh mein aa raha hai? Okay, that's why social cohesion is one factor here. Okay, apart from this, you can also see like what is the public awareness levels, what is the public education levels of this particular matter. Okay, and further, access to healthcare, social services in the region, all these things comes under social capacity. Okay, and further, governance capacity. How well is the leadership effective? Is that clear? How well is the leadership effective? How clear are the policies and regulations, and how well the agencies of the government are coordinating at the horizontal as well as verticals. Okay, at the parallels and the verticals. Okay, so all these things, I mean, one more thing to add, transparency and accountability in their functions. All these things will add to something called as the governance capacity. Okay, next, environmental capacity. How degraded is the environment in that region, right? Now, for example, can I say Mumbai was, like the northern suburbs of Mumbai was very much prone to the disaster of the urban flooding because the environmental mangroves was completely cleared, right? Chennai was prone because the wetlands were completely filled, encroached, right? Samajh mein aa raha hai? So this is another factor that you need to look at. Is this clear? And now, apart from that, like you can also look at some qualitative and quantitative indicators. Okay, when you look at some qualitative and quantitative indicators, like you can also see what is the potential economic losses. Okay, what is the potential economic losses? How much can be the mortality rate? How much can be the morbidity rate? And like how much should be invested in the disaster risk reduction process? All these things comes under quantitative. And qualitative is basically the perception of risk. Okay, how do we perceive the risk? And like basically what you can actually look at is the effectiveness of local governance is higher, the perception of risk will be lower, vice versa. Is that clear? So something like this. Okay, and like on the same lines, even the government has also taken up some steps, like there are certain tools and all those that can actually look at the resilience index in this particular area. Okay, considering these parameters, they make the resilience index. Like for example, the disaster resilience scorecard for cities and the baseline resilience indicators for communities. It's called BRIC. Okay, it's called BRIC. So this is something that you can see. And similarly, you have one more thing, that is Community Tsunami Resilience Index, CTRI. Okay, Community Tsunami Resilience Index. So like this, there are several parameters that will assess each of the zone. Samajh mein aaya? Is this clear? So I know it is getting very technical, so but otherwise this is the subject like that. Okay, so so that is another thing. So apart from that, various elements of the resilience framework. When we look at the various elements of resilience framework, the first element is you have to understand the risk. Okay, so first element is basically you have to understand the risk. What is the character of the hazard? Okay, like for example, you can actually look into is it periodic? Is it once in a while it happened, or it is periodic but this is the first time it has been increased in intensity. Okay, something like this. You need to look at the characteristic of the hazard. Okay, and second of all, how vulnerable and how much exposed that area is. Okay, that is something you need to look at. Basically, probably if the area is having greater population of the old age, then it is very much vulnerable. Okay, so if the area is having very old infrastructure, that is very much vulnerable. Okay, so like that, and based on that informations and data that is collected, then you will actually identify the risk and understand the risk there. Is that clear? And second step is strong governance and institutional agreements or arrangements. Okay, strong governance and institutional arrangements. So here, firstly, you need to have clear policy. Like we have a clear policy NDMA. Okay, under the policy, it gives proper roles for each of the segment. Like national NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, will give the guidelines. State Disaster Management Authority will actually sort of implement it. District Disaster Management Authority will monitor it. It is clear-cut framework. Okay, the policy should be clear and the legislation should be clear at all levels. Secondly, there should be good amount of coordination and collaboration. Tomorrow, once you become IAS officer, like if there is a flooding or if there is some disaster in your district, okay, you should actually, of course, you will know whom to approach. When you approach, if they say, "Arey, I am not the person," you call another department, or if they behave like this, then it will delay the process. Okay, so it is very important to make sure there is proper coordination and collaboration. Okay, also tomorrow at the ground level, you might even need some people to work, right, during the time of disaster. So you need to probably have some good coordination with the private sector, NGOs, that is also collaborations and coordinations with them. Okay, and apart from that, resource allocation. How much human resource should be allocated, how much financial resource should be allocated, okay, and how much technical resources should be allocated, all these things should be kept in mind. Okay, so these comes under the strong governance and institutional arrangement. Okay. Next, after this, you can see there is investing in resilience. When you see investing in resilience, you should always construct, see for example, resilient infrastructure. When we say resilient infrastructure, for example, the defense against the hazard, okay, can be actually be done. Like for example, if you look at Chandigarh, okay, Chandigarh city is actually in zone 4 earthquake, okay, zonation, zone 4, okay, earthquake vulnerability. Now when you see that area, that entire city is actually constructed in such a manner, there is no high-rise buildings over there, okay, and there is sufficient spacing so that in case of a disaster, people can easily come out and to the safe zone, right? There is good amount of parks and everything, open areas where they can come out. Okay, so like that, it should be resilient. But look at Delhi. Delhi is not resilient. One strong earthquake, it can devastate a bigger portion of Delhi. But Delhi is very vulnerable. Okay, so that is something you can see. And also, you can see that investing in resilience also includes capacity building. Locals should be made aware what to do and what not to do. Okay, so like I'll give you one simple example. There was an incident in, I guess this very long back, some decade ago or something. So there was an incident where a tanker was carrying petrol, okay, and it happened to sort of topple down, and because of some accident, and people should be aware that they should not go closer to it because it is inflammable, right? And you know, this probably happened in Pakistan, I guess, I'm not sure. People literally went with buckets but never returned back. Okay, so this is what happened. So like basically what you can see is like do's and don'ts are mandatory. Okay, you should know that. Okay, so like I mean these things actually is the training and education awareness should be given not just for individuals, public, but also for the government workers and everybody who are engaged in relief works. Okay, so that is something. And apart from that, you can also see that preparedness and early warning system, which I have already spoken about. Okay, that is one part of it. Like having multi-hazard early warning system will help and ease the vulnerabilities. And also like conducting drills and exercises. Like probably you might be having several friends who are working in IT sectors and all. They will actually have once in 3 months at least they'll have a mock drill where everybody will come out and assemble somewhere and like they'll tell them what to do and what not to do in case of some fire or something like that. Okay, so that is something. And also you can see that there is one more aspect that you can see. Always after the disaster, the importance comes down to building back better. Okay, you're not building back to normalcy, but you will build back to better, because the next event will not affect more than what has affected this time. Okay, so that is the method of building back better. Okay, so that is something you can look at. And further, there is the next part of this question that is mentioned, the global targets of Sendai framework. There are 7 global targets. Okay, so like the first target says reduce the global mortality by 2030, that is induced by disasters. Okay, sorry, global mortality that is induced by by 2030, that is induced by the disasters. Okay, and like this is actually calculated as an average per 1 lakh. Okay, average per 1 lakh population, how many deaths are happening. Okay, that should be reduced. Second thing, how many people are generally affected because of the disasters per 1 lakh population should also be reduced by 2030. Okay, that is second goal. And the third goal says whatever the direct economic loss is happening, okay, that is to be reduced. Is that clear? See, the losses, economic losses can be of 2 types. One is direct, the second one is indirect. Direct kya hota hai? Like for example, the infrastructure that is rumbled, okay, or like for example the critical infrastructure that is damaged. Okay, so these are direct loss. What is indirect loss? Like for example, after 2004 tsunami, did people dare to go for Goa or like any coastal areas for trip or vacation? No. Okay, see, basically at least if not west coast, people did not dare to go to east coast, right? So now tourism impacted, livelihood impacted, that is indirect hit. Okay, so that is something you need to look at. So it's saying the target C is saying that should be reducing the direct losses. Okay, so that is what it is saying. And the fourth one is basically it is saying that like see, I did not say it is a negative point. I did not say it is a negative point. Did I say so? Huh. No, my question is very simple here. There will be indirect loss because if there is any disaster, after that disaster, of course the tourism that is visiting that place will be like, okay, Falgam attack hoga abhi. Haan. No, it's not the question. See, every particular issue or a topic will have multiple dimensions, correct? So I am telling you one of the dimensions and probably you are telling me the other dimension. What I am trying to tell you is like direct loss is where the infrastructure get damaged. Indirect loss is where because of a disaster, like several sectors will see losses because like for example, Falgam attack hua hai, uski baad abhi, that is a disaster. Okay, so because of that, I can say probably the amount of tourists visiting Kashmir is reduced. So now there is an economic loss, that is also an economic loss for the state, correct? So that is an indirect loss. Okay, that ways we are looking at it. Okay, yeah. Because their mobility is limited, right? Exceptions. You are speaking about exception. Let us speak about India, you tell me. Right? You speak about the neighboring countries of India. You speak about all the developing countries. Okay, so it's an exception. Exception is Japan. Okay, yeah. Okay, any other doubts? Okay, chalo. So we were actually looking at the other one, that is basically, see, we should make sure generally what happens is because of the disasters, several critical infrastructure will be like damaged. When they are damaged, then the disruption of the services will cost a lot of losses in terms of lives and economy. Like for example, recently there was this master class which I had taken regarding the Himalayan crisis. You can watch that video. In that, I have specifically mentioned one point that Uttarakhand, Nainital, Mussoorie, okay, these places, if there is a strong earthquake, then hospitals, fire stations, police stations, which are critical infrastructure, will not even survive. Okay, this is something I've mentioned in that. That is the best example for this. Okay, such losses should be reduced. Okay, so you can watch that video. It is on any which ways. It is on the YouTube only. Okay, you can go for that masterclass series and search for Himalayan crisis. So you will get that. Okay, yeah. Next, apart from this, you can also see one more thing. Like there is like one more aspect where it is saying that this is actually the deadline is over for this aspect. It was 2020. The deadline is. It said there should be more number of countries coming up with national to local level, okay, disaster risk reduction strategies. Okay, why local? Because they know the needs at the local. Why national? Because some require the uniform policies. Like for example, terrorism. Okay, it's a man-made disaster. Okay, or like nuclear disaster or chemical disaster, radiological disasters. Okay, these are basically something requires a national policy. Okay, something like this. So apart from that, the last one, I mean, sorry, we have studied 5. Okay, sixth one. Sixth one is basically that it says develop more of international cooperation with the developing countries. Okay, especially to facilitate their capacity building. Is that clear? And the last one says there should be multi-hazard early warning systems in the place which is well upgraded, sophisticated, capable enough to reduce the risk. Okay, so this is something that it says with respect to this question. Okay, I hope I have covered it very holistically. Okay, yeah, any doubts? Yes, sir. I guess you were asking some question. No. Any other doubts? Clear? We'll go with the next. Sendai framework is actually a particular policy, a global policy, which is actually looking at pre-disaster management. Okay, so that is very specifically looking at the pre-disaster management. Okay, yeah. You said your disaster management classes is done. So whatever I have told, every point is mentioned in this again. Okay, so let's go to the, see, this is the global targets of the Sendai framework, which we were actually looking at. See, reduce the global disaster mortality by 2030, and same way reduce the number of affected people globally by 2030, and here reduce the direct disaster economic losses, reduce the disaster damage to critical infrastructure, and increase the number of countries with national and local strategies for disaster risk reduction, and enhance international cooperation with the developing countries so that they can actually build the capacity to fight the disasters. And last one is basically increase the availability of multi-hazard early warning systems where they can be well prepared to mitigate the disaster. Okay, so these are the ones. Next we have question number 3. Okay, so here the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, has predicted a global sea level rise of about 1 meter by 2100. What would be its impact on India and other countries in the Indian Ocean region? Okay, so the question, if you look at here, they are not asking you for any suggestions, or if they are not even asking you for any governance aspects, they are not asking for any laws, schemes or policies. What they are asking is what is the impact. Okay, they are not even asking the causes. Don't spend your time or waste your time on causes. Is that clear? So now you can look at this. So now see, when we say global sea level rise, okay, as per the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, it has already mentioned that by 2100, okay, AD, we will be seeing, we'll be witnessing 1 meter rise in the global sea level. Okay, so when this happens, you will see very much profound devastating effects or impacts, especially on the coastal areas in the tropical region. Okay, see, when there are sea level rise की दो चीज़ें reasons है. What are the two reasons, two important reasons for the sea level rise? Can somebody tell me? Melting of the glacier and how? Okay, anybody? Sorry? No, that is not responsible. हाँ हाँ वही है, वो तो ग्लेशियल मेल्टिंग तो हो गया ना, इससे छोड़ के क्या है? व्हाट इज एनीथिंग एल्स? नो. रेनफॉल कहाँ से होता है? क्लाउड्स. क्लाउड्स कैसा बनता है? कंडेंसेशन ऑफ वाटर वेपर. वाटर वेपर कहाँ से आता है? वही है. सो व्हाट इज टेकन इज गिवन बैक. ओके, डोंट वरी अबाउट दैट. हाँ, टेल मी. एनी आइडिया? नो. Okay, chalo, let me tell you, let me ask you this. Global sea level rise. It's globe. Okay, you are saying regional. No. Chalo, I'll tell you. One, glacial melting, as you said. Two, water expands when it is warmed. Okay, you said global warming, that's why I asked you how. Okay, global warming की वजह से temperature बढ़ेगा, tropical areas में water expansion होगा, sea level उससे भी बढ़ेगा. These are two important reasons. You need to remember this. Okay. So when temperature increases, water expands. Okay. Water will actually expand. That is how the temperature rise is result. मतलब ocean temperature rise. Okay. Ocean temperature rise and the glacial melting are the two important reasons. Is that clear? So now when you look at this, basically here, this particular sea level rise will have a devastating impact on various areas. It is firstly the geographical region, secondly the economic aspects, thirdly the social structure, and also the environmental aspects. Okay, this is where you can see the ramifications of these particular disaster. Okay, so now when you look at the geographical and physical impact, firstly what you can see, coastal inundation. Okay, coastal inundation, when water actually comes onto the coastal area, okay, then you can see there is salt water that is inundating into the agriculture land. So if you put salt water, can you do farming? No. Okay, so one, then the food security reduces. Second, the groundwater will be actually sort of intruded by the salt water. It is also spoiling, and now it is resulting in the threat to water support or water facilitation there. Okay, so next, apart from this, you can actually see like several places and several cities and several deltaic areas will be completely submerged with 1 meter rise. And in India, you can say Mumbai, Chennai, Kolkata, Kochi and Sundarbans will be particularly at risk. They will be at risk. Okay, where Mumbai is like suspected to lose 22% of the city, and Chennai is supposed to lose like 215 square kilometers of the city. Is that clear? So this is what you can see with respect to these two cities, the threat it has. Okay, so imagine 22% of Mumbai city, it's the economic capital. How much it will have an implication on the country's GDP, that is also there. Okay, next, apart from that, can I say this will actually result in increased exposure to coastal flooding? Yes. Okay, those areas which are low lying will be submerged, but those areas which are at the brim, they will be seeing frequent coastal flooding. Is that clear? And apart from that, then whenever there is coastal flooding, can I say there will be exaggerated amount of coastal erosion? Yes, hundreds and thousands of years that the particular, what do you call it, the rivers had acted to bring and deposit the sediments. These sediments will be taken away. Okay, I'll tell you that also. Yeah. So apart from that, okay, yes, of course, like one simple example I'll give you. 2004 tsunami, okay, submerged the southernmost point of India, right? Which is the southernmost? Indra Point. Otherwise, the other name of it, Pygmalion Point. It is called Pygmalion Point. Okay, so remember this. Now, when you look at this, that point was actually submerged. Now, if the tsunami can submerge it, then 1 meter rise, what will happen? Okay, you will have the nations that will be coming as a climate refugee or environmental refugee. Maldives, Seychelles, okay, all these will come. Okay, that I was supposed to take it when the countries come. Okay, yeah. Okay, next, Apart from that, this was the first one that you see, geographical and physical impact. Now let us look at economic impact. Several infrastructure will be damaged. Can I say, like port cities? Ports will be gone. Airports, like the ports, airports, or like the power plants, roads, railways, sab kuch gone, right? Tourism, of course, that is also there. Yes, of course, that is also there. So basically, I was speaking about the critical infrastructure firstly. Okay, so all these things, and most importantly, you remember the nuclear power plants require water resource. So most of the times they'll be located near to the coast. Okay, now imagine the domino effect of it. Okay, that is also there. And further, there'll be loss of livelihood, like you said. Okay, loss of livelihood can be because of, I said, agricultural lands. Okay, and I said now when the beaches and everything are gone, there will not be much of the tourism also. Okay, so further you can see salinization will actually, sorry, one more thing. The saline water intruding into the ecosystems like mangroves and all. Okay, so that will also be impacted because mangroves are the nurseries and the breeding grounds. Okay, जहाँ पे fishing बहुत ज़्यादा होता है, right? So now if that is the case, then fishing is not there. So I mean fishes are not hatching or like laying eggs over there. Then of course the fishermen community will be impacted. Okay, so this is also something you can see. Like and also yes, of course, disruption of the tourism. That is something you can also look at. Like for example, especially Goa, Kerala, and Tamil Nadu in India will witness the major problem. Okay, and apart from that, you can also see there will be a lot of expenses on the government to adapt against these risks. Okay, like for example, they will have to build sea walls, they will have to build embankments, and they will have to sort of go for afforestation of mangroves and all these things. उसमें बहुत ज़्यादा पैसा डालना पड़ता है. Okay, one side like there is loss, the other side they have to invest on some other structures. Okay, next you can also look at social and humanitarian impacts. Okay, so when you look at social and humanitarian impacts, there will be mass displacement, national level displacement of migration. Okay, of migrants, sorry. Okay, like for example, national level displacement का meaning क्या है? Maldives पूरा की पूरा will be actually displaced. Okay, Seychelles पूरा की पूरा will be displaced. So what happens is basically you will see a mass migration of the climatic refugees. Is that clear? And apart from this, you can also see because of the warm temperatures, and also the water flooded conditions, there will be more of waterborne diseases seen in the region. Okay, yes ma'am. See, that is a difficult question. That is like for example, the ones like sentinels and all, we cannot help. Okay, maybe the government can take some efforts to do, but at the time of risk probably they might cooperate, but otherwise because they are the most isolated in the world. Okay, but otherwise other tribes and all probably can be evacuated. Okay, yeah. And see, that is like such loss of like such tribes is a loss of cultural heritage. That is some good point you can write. Okay, it's a loss of cultural heritage. Okay, not just that, it can be because it's a living tradition, it's a living culture. Okay, and such living cultures can also be lost. Otherwise you can also think about the cultural heritage like for example the buildings and all those at the coastal areas, that will also be impacted. Okay, so further you can also see environmental impact, heavy loss on the biodiversity, right? Environmental loss will amount to heavy biodiversity loss. So further you can see like of course there will be the impact on other countries also. Like if you see Maldives, Seychelles and Comoros and all, they'll be completely like they will not even survive. Matlab these countries geographically will not survive. Okay, and what you can see is basically that will become completely uninhabitable, and people will have to go for different place. Okay, so there will be the climatic refugees. Okay, and if you look at Bangladesh, the Sundarban Delta, I thought there is some blackout or something, huh? Okay. So yeah, okay. So basically there is this Sundarban Delta that is actually spread across Bangladesh and India. That is a low-lying area. that will actually be inundated and submerged. Okay, partially, not completely. And you can see even the Sundarban Delta and all those have rich biodiversity. Okay, so otherwise you can also see the entire East Coast Plains is actually very rich for the cultivation, agriculture, it's mimicked as the rice bowl of India. Okay, now imagine the rice bowl of India will be under threat. Food security will be under threat. Okay, so that is also one another important aspect. So again we diverted to India, but we should look at the same will be actually happening there also, because that is the place where they get fertile alluvium and also the rivers passing through, right? So that is the region where Bangladesh has agriculture fields. Okay, so that will also be impacted. Okay, that is something you can write. And Sri Lanka will actually witness exodus, or else let us use a different word. Sri Lanka shall witness extreme coastal erosion. Okay, Sri Lanka is you can look at Sri Lanka, the center is a peak. Okay, it is a center is a peak. It is like this, with a peak at the center. Okay, so it is like this. So what happens, some portion will be submerged, but majority of the portion will witness erosion. Okay, that's what happens. And apart from that, you can see Pakistan mein to, okay, to be very specific, I don't know which part of Pakistan we need to speak about, because Balochistan and Sindh will actually face the crisis. Okay, so Balochistan and Sindh will actually face the crisis, because cities like Karachi and all will be gone. Okay, it will be gone, and Balochistan and Sindh will actually be experiencing good amount of the what do you call it as the coastal erosion and coastal submergence. Okay.
UPSC CSE 2024 results are out and dreams have turned into ranks. Now you are asking, how do I get there? You've got the drive. What you need is the right guidance. Lakshya Integrated Mentoring Program 2026 by Vision IAS is your one-stop guidance program for prelims, mains, and interview. Smart, strategic revision for prelims and mains. Consistent mentorship with personalized feedback. Daily weekly schedule and practice targets. Custom test practice via Sandhan test series. Interview and personality test training. All of it structured to guide you, strategic to keep you focused, and designed to meet your evolving needs. New batch starts from 19th May. It's your turn now. Start strong with Lakshya Mentoring Program 2026. Are you still juggling newspapers, random notes, and endless PDFs trying to make sense of current affairs? Let's make your UPSC prep smarter. Introducing Digital Current Affairs Premium by Vision IAS, your all-in-one platform to read, revise, and write better every single day. Have a doubt from today's news or something in your syllabus? Just ask and get instant AI-powered answers that are concise, relevant, and completely aligned with the UPSC exam pattern. No more guesswork, no more confusion. Want to boost your mains writing skills? Practice daily with structured questions and get expert feedback to sharpen your content, clarity, and analysis, because writing well is winning half the battle. Need better revision? Use quick notes and highlights to save key points, mark important lines, and organize your current affairs in a way that actually works for you. And here's the best part, some of the most powerful tools are absolutely free. Daily news summaries from The Hindu, Indian Express and more, curated, filtered, and exam ready. Downloadable PDFs so your notes stay organized and accessible. Daily quizzes and MCQs to reinforce what you've learned and track your progress. A smart student dashboard to monitor your performance and stay on top of your goals. Whether you're just starting or deep into your prep, Digital Current Affairs Premium adapts to your strategy and makes every minute count. So why prepare the hard way when you can prepare the smart way? Visit www.visionis.in/current-affairs and start transforming your current affairs prep today. Because with Vision IAS, you don't just stay updated, you stay ahead.
that is the cause. Of course. No, we instead of that we cannot impact. That we cannot actually put it here. Okay, because it is like the glacial melting is resulting in sea level rise. इसकी वजह से क्या impact हो रहा है? You are actually giving the answer for glacial melting का क्या consequences है? Okay, two different things. Yeah. Yes, it will be impacted. Of course, it will be impacted. Okay, because strategic point of view, yes, of course, even Lakshadweep also to that matter, they will be impacted. Okay, yeah. Next, apart from that, you can actually, you raised a good point. You can actually mention that the coral reefs will be impacted. That's the rich biodiverse areas. Okay, Lakshadweep is a coral island, right? They will be impacted. So you can mention that. So Great Barrier Reef, ये सब कुछ impact होगा. Okay. Next, otherwise, next one, you can also look at the East African coastal nations, like for example Somalia, Kenya, Tanzania, Mozambique, all these places. Okay, these places will also have the coastal threat to their infrastructure and the ecosystems. Okay, so these are something you can actually mention. Okay, so this is about our third question. Any doubts here? Anyone clear with this? Okay. वन मीटर कितना होता है बताओ? एक हाथ के बराबर. लॉन्ग स्केल कितना होता है? लॉन्ग स्केल 30 सेंटीमीटर्स कितना होता है? हाँ, मतलब इतना. ओके, फाइन, दिस मच. सो 30 + 30 60 हो गया. वी आर नॉट जायंट्स. No, but 1 meter is too much. Okay, 1 meter is significant amount that I can. Of course, because those countries are like, see, for example, let us speak about Chennai. Chennai is at the sea level. Okay, this is sea level. इधर तक पानी है. थोड़ा सा. That is the thing. Okay, yeah. Okay, done. Yeah, next. Your question sounded like ये कुछ लोग बोलते हैं ना, मतलब कुछ countries बोल रहे हैं ना that there is no link with the climate change, so we'll withdraw from climate change. So are you some brother of Trump? So chalo, coming back. Yeah. Okay, now the next question is the question that is dealing with the oil pollution. Okay, so here, what is oil pollution? What are its impacts on the marine ecosystem? In what way is oil pollution particularly harmful for a country like India? Okay, so you have to define. This is your introduction. It is mentioned. Okay, this is mentioned in the question. That will be your introduction. Impacts on the marine ecosystem. Okay, and in what way oil pollution particularly harmful for a country like India? So Indian perspective. These are the three things. Okay, so these are the three things you need to look at. Now, what is oil pollution? Contamination of any water body. Okay, so primarily it can be ocean, seas, rivers or anything. Lakes also. Okay, where you will see that oil is intentionally or unintentionally like disrupting the homeostatic equilibrium of that ecosystem. Is that clear? समझ में आया? So that is something you will write as a definition. Okay, so now where does this oil come from? What is the source? First thing, oil spills can happen because of the accidents. The oil tankers, okay, so that they are going through, like for example, the Strait of Hormuz, say Strait of Malacca, India is very prone because this region carries huge volumes of the global trade in terms of crude oil. Okay, it actually takes so much of the crude oil. So now you tell me, if it is taking so much of the crude oil, then can it actually sort of like any disaster over there, can it actually be very immune for India? No, India is not immune. Okay, so this is something that you need to know. And apart from that, do you know the concept of ballast water? No? Okay, see, like for example, let us say this is a ship. Okay, this is a ship. So इसमें क्या होता है? Like when you actually sort of carry some goods, okay, you put the load onto it. Now what happens? Buoyancy and like submergence, so it goes down. You go to the destination, you actually drop the luggage, I mean the goods over there, and now you have to come back like without any goods. So after removing the weight, it will like feel the buoyancy, it will come back and bounce back, right? Now it will lose the center of gravity when it is traveling. So oceans are very strong winds, oceans are witnessing very strong winds. So when it is coming back, what you can see is there will not be that amount of stability, it can topple. Okay, so to prevent that scenario, what they do is the lower deck of the ship will be opened for the water. Is that clear? So when it is opened for the water, it is actually taking the water into the deck, and it is coming, and it is like, you know, when it has to like it parks in the destination, when it has to fill the next set of goods, it will release it. Okay, इसमें क्या होता है जब ये करता है ना, इसमें कुछ oil वगैरह होता है ना, that is actually released into the water. Okay, so you can see that water, I mean the oil and some grease and all those that is there, that will be actually released into the water. Now that is unintentional way. Okay, so like you can see that ballast water and all is often like considered to be illegal, but it is unregulated. Okay, that is something you can look at. Moreover, what you can see is basically there is one more thing. Several times there is land-based runoff. How? Like for example, like there is untreated wastage. Like for example, let us say like this. We have so much of vehicular density in Delhi or any cities. Okay, there will be oil leak, oil wastage or petroleum, whatever it is, right? When there is like heavy rainfall, it carries the oil along with it, right? That way also the oil is reaching the oceans or lakes, wherever it is raining into. So that is something you can see, especially from the places where refineries are there. Okay, उधर से बहुत ज़्यादा ही होता है. Refineries कहाँ पे है इंडिया में? Coastal areas में, right? So when the refineries are in the coastal areas, you will see that amount of oil that is actually witnessing the surface runoff will also be greater. Is that clear? And further, you can see atmospheric deposition is also there. Okay, how? This is something, a new point that you can actually mention. Okay, think about this. How many of you like the smell of petrol? Okay. Why do we actually witness the smell of petrol? Because that is a volatile compound, volatile organic compound, correct? Matlab, at the temperatures, it is evaporating, right? When it evaporates, now the petrol is in the atmosphere, accepted. जब बारिश होता है, this is actually in the water. Now it is carried to the, through the storm water drains, it is carried to the, like you know, so can be ocean, seas or rivers or whatever. समझ में आया कैसे जा रहा है? Is this clear? So this is something, a different point that you can think about and write. Okay, so all these things you can write. And also petroleum exhaust. Okay, petroleum burning or diesel burning की वजह से exhaust होता है ना, वो भी atmosphere पे ही होता है. That is also carried. Okay, वो तो कम है, but the volatility I am speaking about, that can be taken into account. Okay, especially this is along the oil wells, like the Arab countries. That is somewhere you can look at. Okay, next, apart from that, now these are the sources. Then what is the impact? We saw the sources. Now let us look at the impact. Okay, need not focus much on the sources because they're not asking, but I am giving it to you because you can mention a couple of them there. Okay, so what is the impact? Firstly, it will be very much harmful to the marine life. Is that clear? It is very much harmful to the marine life. And what you can see is like birds, they will be there because they have their food there, fishes. Okay, now whenever birds' feathers will get like coated with oil, now they cannot fly. They become heavier. They cannot even swim. They will sink. Is that clear? They will sink. So this is what you will see in terms of their death. Birds will die. Second thing, marine mammals, like for example, you can think about dolphins, whales and seals. Okay, so what happens is, if they inhale those oil fumes, if they inhale those oil, or if they actually get exposed to the oil, then what happens is they will actually see gastrointestinal damage or like organ failures, reproductive issues or even respiratory problems because gills will be blocked, right? See, in fishes gills will be blocked. Here their, like you know, their ventilation, their respiration organs will be actually impacted. Is that clear? So that is something you can see. And moreover, you know shellfish, not selfish, shellfish, right? You know shellfish. So shellfish, when it is actually carrying this oil in their body, that is biomagnification. Okay, it comes back to humans because humans consume the shellfish. Is that clear? So that is also there. Okay, so now apart from that, can I say if the oil spill expands to mangrove areas, expands to coral reefs, expands to seagrass ecosystem, expands to kelp forests, can I say these are rich biodiverse habitats, right? That is an example for habitat destruction, right? Habitat destruction leads to extinction of species. Is that clear? Habitat destruction leads to extinction of species. That is also important, you need to look at. Okay, so this is, and apart from that, think about this. Waves will carry this oil and deposit on the beach. Okay, will the tourism be facilitated? No. Okay, tourism chhod do. Like, can you tell me where in India does the olive ridley turtles nest? Odisha. Around that Odisha where the beaches are there. Abhi oil spill ho gaya. Okay, actually when they come for nesting, they actually burrow and go inside and they lay the eggs and they go back. Correct? Now you tell me, when if the particular sand is completely filled with oil, okay, then oil depositions hai beach sand mein, then can actually mass nesting happen? Now forget about just this particular olive ridley turtles, think about how many other animals and organisms are looking forward to nest there. You can see every evening after the sunset the crabs will come onto the beaches. Okay, now what about them? So the diversity is impacted. Okay, samajh mein aaya? So this is something you can think about. Now apart from this very simple aspect, let me ask you, in a food chain, what is the starting trophic level? Primary producers, correct? If it is terrestrial, it is grasses, trees or any of this. If it is oceans, phytoplanktons. Now if oil is there on the surface, phytoplanktons are the one that actually floats. If oil is there on the surface, can I say that leads to biomagnification? Not just that, but also death of the other animals, right? Is it not impacting the base foundation of the aquatic ecosystem? Correct? Samajh mein aaya? This is another important aspect. Okay. Now you can also see when oil is there, imagine you put oil, let us say there is water and iske upar oil lagaya. Okay. There's one more glass only with water. Okay. If I put light here and the same intensity light in the only water thing, which one will actually penetrate the bottom? Only water. Then when actually you can see when oil spills or oil pollution happens, the water does not allow the sunlight, then it will not allow the photosynthesis of the aquatic plants. When there is no aquatic plants photosynthesis, there is no dissolved oxygen, then it will lead to dead zones. Is that clear? It will lead to dead zones. So this is another impact. So apart from this, like you can see, what is the oil pollution impact or harmful impact, particularly harmful for India? How is it impactful? Okay, that is something we need to know. See, India has 7,500 kilometers of coastline, right? And what you can see is we have sufficient amount of mangroves, coral reefs and also estuaries and salt marshes. All of them will be impacted as I have explained earlier. Is that clear? Like the way I explained it earlier, all of them will be impacted, but this time you are actually mentioning India has these places mangroves, these places corals. Which are the places where we have corals? Lakshadweep, Gulf of Mannar and Gulf of Kutch, very good. Andaman में बहुत ज़्यादा नहीं है, okay, not much, but है ज़्यादा नहीं है, but you can write that also, okay, yeah. So you can write that also. Lakshadweep, Gulf of Mannar and Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Gulf of Kutch. These are the places, okay. So you should write this. Is this clear? And apart from that, now you just think about this magnitude. How much of the India's population is dependent for their livelihood on the oceans? At least 1%. I am speaking very worst case. At least 1%. Okay. Now imagine, see, actually I am telling you the fisheries is one of the biggest contributing sector to the GDP. And if I am saying 1%, that is absolutely not the reality. Is that clear? Absolutely not the reality. Then there is significant millions of population that is dependent on the oceans for the livelihood. Can I say their livelihood will be impacted? Right? Okay, so that is something you can see. Next, apart from fisheries, now you think about tourism. Abhi batao, how much of the population is dependent on the oceans? Include tourism, right? Significant proportion, correct? Entire coastal region, 7,500 kilometers is dependent on it, correct? So now tourism will also be impacted, very true. Okay, would you like to go and take a sun bath in the oil beach? No, of course no, right? So that is a problem. Okay, next, apart from that, like somebody was mentioning about the strategic location, right? So when you look at that part, like Strait of Hormuz is between which countries? Egypt. UAE, Oman? Okay, so write down somewhere that you will actually fill up that particular question. Between which countries is Strait of Hormuz? I'll give you one country, the other country you find out. Djibouti in Africa. Gibraltar is Mediterranean. Okay, it's not there. Yemen and Djibouti. Okay, yeah. Okay, so Strait of Hormuz, okay, Strait of Hormuz to this particular, Strait of Malacca. Okay, so that is where you can see. Okay, so now when you look at this, that is actually a strategic location, high maritime traffic you can see in this region, and that will be impacted. India's strategic location will not be tapped if there is oil pollution. Okay, so that is also there. Next, apart from that, there is one more thing that is like basically the vulnerable coastal population, which I have already told you in terms of the economic aspect, but this time I will be telling you with respect to the dense population that is subjected to displacements. Is that clear? So migration and all these things will be happening if oil spills will be the continuous process. Okay, and of course, like you can see, there is also oil spills will actually impact very badly along the west coast of India than the east coast, because west coast of India, when there is monsoons are very strong winds. Okay, monsoons are very strong winds, and they will start actually sort of pushing this oil that is on the surface by spreading it and resulting in spreading of it along the surface area. Is that clear? So that is one more thing you can see. Is this clear? Okay, yeah. Next, apart from this, you can also see that it will be costing a lot for India to clean it up. Okay, so that is also one important economic factor that you need to look at. Okay, so these are some aspects with respect to the harmful impacts of oil pollution on India. Is this clear? Okay, yeah. You want a break? You want a break? Okay. Chalo, come back in 10 minutes. We'll look into the next question then. What's the time now? 3:55. Come back by 4:05. Okay. Yeah. Yes. We'll resume. Okay. Are you guys able to catch up with what I'm teaching? Better? Okay. Yeah. You're not feeling any problem with the pace, right? Okay, because even I have to maintain that pace to complete a lot of topics. Okay. So, yeah. Okay, so this was the next question, question number 5. So you can see here, dam failures are always catastrophic, especially on the downstream side, resulting in a colossal loss of life and property. Analyze the various causes of dam failure. Give 2 examples of large dam failure. This is another way of marking on your paper. Is that clear? The first way I told you, only mark the ones which is required and mark 1, 2, 3. This is another way. It is asking 2 things, so I put a star mark there. Okay, so see, having knowledge is not just sufficient for clearing this exam. To clear this exam, along with the knowledge, you need to have some tricks and ways to analyze the question and the practice of writing. No practice of writing, how much ever you accumulate the knowledge, it will not help you. Okay, you have to write at least one answer every day. Okay, write the, like you must be knowing Anudeep Duri Shetty, right? He says, like, write one answer at least one day. The first answer, the worst answer that you write is necessary to compare yourself with the progress that you see later. Okay, so that is something you should always focus on. Okay, yeah, any which ways, if you are looking for something to learn from the topper stock or anything, these are the things that you should actually adopt. Okay, so any which ways, coming back. So now let us look at this aspect. So what is dam failure actually? What is dam failure? How can it happen? That's what they're asking, various causes. Huh? Earthquake, okay, and? Right, that is also there. Unregulated practices also, yes, huh. Overcapacity due to? Yeah, flooding also. So chalo, let us look at this way. It is a man-made catastrophe or a natural? Man-made, purely man-made, accepted. So disaster management subject mein disasters are there, that is man-made, accepted, clear? So this is one example. Okay, now when you look at this here, a dam failure is seen as a catastrophic man-made disaster where you will see there is sudden release of huge volume of water that impacts the downstream because of the failure of the dam that is resulting from various causes. Is that clear? Samajh mein aaya? So now when you look at this here, when it goes on the downstream, it impacts life, property and environment. Is that clear? Next, so specifically if you look at this factor, see, there is no one single factor that can be responsible for the dam failure. Is that clear? There can be something like the engineering deficiencies, okay, wrong engineering strategies, or there can be something like the thing that is hydrological extremes, okay, or something like geological weakness or human error also. Okay, we'll look into each of this in detail. Okay, first thing, here like the overflow of water, I would be addressing it as overtopping. Okay, so matlab top se flow hona. Okay, so now the first important thing, hydrological failures. See, when we look at the hydrological failures, if there is insufficient spillway capacity, what is spillway? The doors. Okay, yeah, the doors that releases the water. If the spillway capacity is not sufficient, okay, I'll give you the example also because it is asking example. When we go to the examples, I'll give you there specifically. The spillway capacity, if it is not sufficient, then you will actually see there will be significant amount of damage that is caused because of the, like, you know, pressure that is exerted by the stagnant amount there. Okay, so like when matlab it can cause cracking and the break of the dams. Is that clear? Secondly, like extreme rainfall or flooding, this is also an hydrological cause. Okay, so extreme rainfall, matlab when there is unprecedented extreme cloudburst, rainfall, thunderstorms, whatever you call it, when there is rainfall, it is beyond the capacity, then of course it will break. The threshold is broken, no? Correct? So that is another thing. And like another important thing is the debris blockage. Okay, see, along the spillways, matlab the doors, if there is debris blocking it, then of course it will constrict the spillway, and there you will see the chances of the pressure not venting out of the hydrological part and will result in the dam failures. Okay, so these are hydrological. On the other hand, let us look at, there is something called seepage and internal erosion. When we look at the seepage and internal erosion, here what happens is the dams are constructed in several materials. It can be something like earth-filled dams, rock-filled dams, several like this. Okay, now like when you have such things, the water can actually seep through the holes, right? When it makes the holes, it is removing the sediments from the construction, I mean from the dam, whether on the floor or on the wall. Correct? When it is removing it, matlab the water will actually penetrate into it and exaggerate that fracture, like it deepens the fracture. So now you tell me, will it be stable if this is happening? This phenomena is called piping. Okay, so this piping, when it happens, do you really think that the structure is stable enough? No, not really. Okay, so that is another important aspect, okay, that can actually weaken the dam. Next, apart from that, whenever you have, like, sort of the foundational materials used to construct the dam, if you are using the wrong ones, then it will be, of course, very strongly, it is a weak infrastructure. Correct? Samajh mein aaya? It is a weak infrastructure. So this is something that you can see. And further, structural failures. If there are any design inadequacies, like for example, the structural calculations are wrong. Okay, like let us say the area receives so much of rainfall, and so like X amount of rainfall, Y amount of glacial melt, but we have taken into account only the glacial melt and constructed the dam. अभी क्या होगा? Rainfall का stress जब बढ़ जाता है, it will break. Okay, that is one mistake. And poor construction quality, substandard materials ये सब कुछ use करके जो बनाता है ना, that will be wrong. Okay, so apart from that, you can also say there can be foundational instability there. मतलब that region, if for example let us say recently I told you I had made a master series class on Himalayas. If you watch that particular video, in that I have actually spoken about a couple of hydropower projects which were washed out due to the Chamoli district floods. Okay, so Chamoli district floods and landslides happen to wash out hydropower projects. Matlab, like when there is landslides or something like that very much prone, it can also break the dams. Correct? It can also break the dams. Okay, so that is also possible. And apart from that, you can also think about material degradation. Once you construct the building or the dam or like infrastructure, it is not going to be the same strength for eternity, right? It will actually age. Okay, when the materials age, it because of the degradation, weathering, erosion जो भी होता है ना, उसकी वजह से जब aging होता है उसको periodic maintenance करना है और replacement भी करना है. Okay, so that is also very important. Otherwise, what will happen is there is also a process, it will start making cavities, it will start eroding, piping, all these things will happen. Okay, so that is something you need to look into. And apart from that, the dam failure can happen due to endogenic activities. You know what are endogenic activities, right? Yes or no? Yeah, the activities that is resulting from sourcing the energy from inside the earth. Okay, like volcanism, earthquakes. Okay, so like these things. So basically like the mountain building, okay, all these things. But otherwise, here in this case, the endogenic activities like volcanism and earthquakes can also have an impact, but in specific to India, earthquakes will have an impact on the dams. Okay, so when there is seismic activities, it can result in cracking the concrete dams. Is that clear? It can develop cracks on the concrete dams. Okay, like for example, imagine there was this earthquake in Bhuj. Okay, Bhuj earthquake lasted for 85 seconds. Okay, now you think about this, 85 seconds, the water is moving in a dam, hypothetically. The water is moving in the dam and the waves are striking very strongly towards the dam wall. Now you tell me what will happen. Right, it will collapse. So that is what we are speaking about. Okay, yeah. So apart from that, you can also look at operational and maintenance failures. Okay, this is very much common. Okay, so you can speak about the Mullaperiyar Dam. Where is Mullaperiyar Dam? It was in news all the time. Kerala. Okay, so this is your task. Go back home and look into what exactly is the issue of Mullaperiyar Dam. Okay, height increase करने के लिए बात चल रहा है, but it is very old structure, almost British era times. Okay, so you can look into that. Okay, so like for example, when we speak about the poor maintenance and all, what you can actually see is basically that you can see that basically is मतलब poor maintenance मतलब inspection कब तक होता है बताओ? Okay, till the time there is a disaster, there is no inspection, right? So फिर वही होता है. So that is the problem. So they have to detect the distress in the early place. Okay, early scenario. That is when it works well. Otherwise, it is a disaster that is going to result in. apart from that you can also see poor maintenance. मैंने बोला था जब भी debris stuck हो जाता है spillway में तो उसको clear ही नहीं करेगा, right? Clear तो करना पड़ता है ना, like periodically at least, right? So those things have to be done, and also repairing the erosion spots, cavitations and piping, ये सब कुछ ध्यान रखना है. Okay, so that is not done. And human error, of course. Okay, like for example human error, when we speak about, if they don't follow the emergency protocol, that's a human error. Okay, they should actually follow the emergency protocol. Like for example, let us say there is lot of like hierarchy, and there is lot of like that red tapeism. Okay, like the person actually says sir brim tak aa raha hai pani, and he calls, he says हाँ ठीक है मैं बोलूँगा, he will call somebody as you see in movies and all. Like finally by the time the decision comes it will break. Okay, ऐसा red tapeism भी नहीं होना है, probably it is reduced now, but otherwise ये भी नहीं होना है. Okay, so apart from that, like very rare instance I am telling you, vandalism. Okay, मतलब कुछ groups will be there, they will go and break the dams or something like that. That is a rare instance that you can mention about. Okay, so other factors also you can think about, like if there's a earth filled dam, okay, earth material that is filled dam, then what happens is there is a chances of growing trees, okay, along the dam. So when the trees grow, what will happen? Biological weathering. Okay, that is actually resulting in destabilization of the wall. Same is the case with the animals that burrows there. Okay, like for example you can look at this groundhogs or muskrats. Okay, these are some species, I have mentioned it in the handout. Okay, these are some species, they tend to actually make embankment dams. Okay, sorry, they tend to I'm sorry, yeah, they tend to make embankment banks, and they actually sort of like what do you call it as like matlab they start burrowing in that region. Okay, is that clear? So this is what happens. So these are some big causes that can actually result in the dam failures. Is that clear? So let me give you some two important examples of this. There is one that is called Banqiao. I don't know how do you pronounce this one. This is in China, Banqiao. Okay, so Banqiao dam failure. This happened in 1975. Okay, August 8th, 1975. You can see this was because of heavy rainfall that caused by typhoon. Okay, a typhoon occurred and it brought like almost very heavy rainfall. Like see, one very good statement I wanted to incorporate in this answer, that part I have written. Dams are constructed to control the floods. Okay, they are actually very effective in controlling those floods which are once in 1,000 years. Such floods can be controlled, but this is an unique example of a flood that resulted from a dam that cannot even happen once in 2,000 years. Samajh mein aaya? Did you understand what I said? Okay, so like basically dams are flood control measures, but the break of this was very deadly. Okay, how deadly I will tell you this, you will be shocked to know. Like the official figure said, 26,000 people were impacted. Okay, official figures of China, but actually considering the post disaster, the domino impact, like for example the diseases, epidemics because of the flooding of water, all these things, it is close to 1,71,000 people who were impacted. Okay, 1,71,000 is not a small number, right? So like that is what you can see. There were famines, there were actually agricultural field loss, and there were actually sort of what you call as epidemics, all these things apart from floods. Okay, so you can see this was such a deadly dam failure because I told you it is something that can happen only once in 2,000 years at least, because this dam failure led to 62 other dams that failed in the same time. Abhi socho kya problem hai iska. Okay, one dam failure led to 62 dams that was on the downstream that led to fail. Okay, so that is something. There was Shimantan dam, that is one of the important significant dam out of those 62. Okay, so such a dam failure it is. Why did it happen? Because there was a typhoon named Nina. Okay, Typhoon Nina actually brought 1060 mm of rainfall in just 24 hours. Okay, so that's where we spoke about structural inadequacies. Okay, is this clear? So that is something you can look at. And the second example is India, Machu Dam. Have you heard of Machu Dam? Anybody from Gujarat? Nobody? Okay. So there's one dam from, there is a dam in Gujarat that is called Machu Dam. August 11, 1979, it was actually resulted in a big disaster. Okay. That disaster happened to be called as Morbi disaster because what you can see is that, okay, chalo, first let me tell you why it happened. This happened because of extreme rainfall and the spillway capacity was very small. I told you spillway capacity is very important. Okay, here the spillway capacity that was given for this dam was 5,663 cubic meters per second. Okay, but what you can see that day was the flood flow was 16,307 cubic meters per second. 3 times. 3 times. Okay, it was 3 times. So that is where, apart from extreme rainfall, it was the biggest drawback that happened to result in the extreme amount of, what do you call it as, the flooding and all those, the resulting from dam failure. Okay, so apart from that, you can also see that was marked with operational failure also, operational issues, like the spill gateways were not released till the nick point or the critical point. Okay, the particular spill gateways were not released earlier. They should have opened it up earlier. Okay, and so you can see roughly 1,800 to 25,000 people actually died. Okay, in this incident, and literally there was an industrial town downstream, Morbi, that was completely devastated. Okay, so that's why it is called Morbi disaster. Is that clear? That's why it's called Morbi disaster. So these are 2 things that you can mention. Is this clear? Next question. Okay, now here is the question. Question number 6. Okay, explain the causes. Okay, explain the causes and effects of coastal erosion in India. What are the available coastal management techniques for combating the hazard? Okay, so this is the next question. So basically here, what you can look at is, just give me a second. Yeah. So what you can look at is causes and effects of coastal erosion in India and how do we actually have the techniques to combat this problem. These are the 3 things. Okay, 1, 2 and 3. Okay, these are the 3 things. Okay, so now when you look at this here, see, coastal erosion when we speak about, as I told you, it's the thousands of years efforts by the rivers and the coastal waves, tides and the currents that has brought the sediments. But of late, because of the several factors, like we saw the sea level rise and several other factors, what you are seeing is like the coastal areas is facing the challenge of erosion. Okay, so what will happen if the erosion occurs? Okay, so firstly, what you can see is like the National Center for Coastal Research has already mentioned there is significant portion of India's coastline witnessing very high coastal erosion. Is that clear? So now what are the reasons? First one, wave actions and currents. Okay, so because of the strong pounding of waves onto the shoreline, you will see repeated erosion or disintegration of the area's sediments and taken away. Okay, or apart from that, you can also see that there is several other aspects like the sea level rise that we have already seen. Okay, we have already looked into the issue of the sea level rise, how it can actually impact the coastal erosion. And thirdly, cyclones and storm surges. When it can actually put the water onto the coast, it will be taking back that water, backwash will be there. When the backwash happens, it actually takes away a lot of, what do you call it as, the sediments. Okay, next, apart from that, tidal action is the same. In a part of the day, the water level rises, it reaches interiors, okay, matlab deeper, and then when the low tide occurs, it is carrying the sediments and going back, correct? So that is also one thing. And apart from that, you can also say geological factors. Like for example, what happens is the coastline, is it made up of rocks, is it made up of soil, is it made up of sand, or is it actually like what sort of material it is made up of, whether it is resistant to the erosion or not, that also matters, right? If it is least resistant to erosion, then greater amount will be taken away, correct? Yes or no? So this is something you can see. Apart from this, you have human induced factors. Like what are human induced factors? Construction of harbors, construction of jetties, okay, fishing jetties, or like ports, okay, all these things actually weakens the particular region, okay. When it weakens the particular region, then you can actually see there is an impact, okay. And further, you can also see like there is of course sand mining and dredging. Illegal sand mining to chalta hai, okay. Like this particular topic, actually this also I have taken a class on, master class on this particular topic also, sand mining aspect. There I have actually dealt this topic in detail, okay, regarding the sand mining and its impact in India, and especially the coastal region is also dealt there, okay. Watch that video also once, okay. And you have the notes, like the detailed way like this only, you have the notes there. You can download the notes and it will help you, okay. So yeah, so basically what happens is like dredging क्या होता है, जब like you know the navigation channels में silt हो जाता है ना, silt is accumulated, उसको remove करना dredging बोलता है. Is that clear? So this is majorly done along the port so that the ships can actually sail freely, okay. Otherwise shallow depths में क्या होता है, ships का damage हो जाएगा, ठीक है. So that is the thing. So basically beach sand mining and dredging is actually a biggest cause of erosion again, okay. So further you can see damming of rivers. When you actually dam the rivers, the flow is changed. मतलब कितना पानी जाता है ना, वो तो flow change हो चुका होगा. So when the flow is changed, there will be reduced flow of sediments also, okay. So that is like you know starving the beaches with the sediment rejuvenation. Is that clear? समझ में आया? Did you get this answer? I mean this point. There is like change, because if you construct the dams, the river flow will be changed, okay, volume will be changed. When that is changed, the amount of rejuvenation possibility of the sediments will be reduced. So उससे क्या होगा, जो भी है वो तो erosion में चले जाएगा, ठीक है. That is something you can see. And apart from that, like destruction of the natural ecosystem, you cut down the mangroves, okay, then of course the erosion will be greater, because wave energy is not dissipated, correct. Wave energy is not dissipated. And similarly coral reef degradation होगा bleaching की वजह से. Shallow waters में जब coral reefs है, it will cut down the wave energy, okay. So if it is degraded, then of course that is not going to cut down the energy. Then the pounding of it, the pounding of the waves on the shoreline will take away greater amount of the sediments, okay. And apart from this, unplanned urbanization and developments, right, like beach resorts, ये सब कुछ बहुत ज़्यादा होता है ना, beach resorts ये सब कुछ रहा. So this is all unplanned constructions, okay. So these are also very much dangerous. So what exactly are the effects of coastal erosion? When there is an effect of coastal erosion, what you can see is generally the agricultural fields, the residential areas and public spaces that is actually along the boundaries will be impacted and will be lost. Is that clear? So that is like the ownership will be lost. I mean the complete land is lost, okay. And secondly, you can see several critical infrastructure like ports, harbors, and like you know jetties, power plants जो भी है, इसके ऊपर भी impact पड़ेगा. Is that clear? Because of the erosion of the coastal areas. And thirdly, the communities will be displaced and their livelihoods will be gone, okay. Like basically if you look at the loss of homes and all these things, especially that is also amount to like you know livelihood ki matlab, like for example these sediments are fertile sediments that is amounting to the agriculture. Now if livelihood is gone, if I am saying the livelihood is gone, that means actually the agriculture is impacted, fishery is impacted, okay, all these things, okay. And further, like when erosion happens, it can also, if whatever is left over like the mangroves or corals and all, these sediments will clog the coral polyps or will clog the mangrove region. That ways it is degrading the habitat in that region also, ecosystem altogether. Okay, so that will be resulting in loss of biodiversity. Okay, and further you can also see there will be saltwater intrusion, because the amount of like that particular, what do you call it as the sea, I mean when the coastal erosion happens, it becomes easier for the water to intrude more inside. Okay, so that ways it can actually result in saltwater intrusions also. Okay, so like this you can have several economic losses and several other aspects that you can see. Okay, so what is the solution? You can go for some hard engineering solutions or the soft engineering solutions. Hard engineering solutions refers to man-made structures. Soft engineering solutions refers to natural aspects. Okay, so like for example construction of sea walls, okay, like some embankments or concrete rocks or something like you can see in Mumbai Marine Drive. Okay, that's a sea wall. Okay, like that you can construct, or you can go for something like grayons. Okay, grayons क्या होता है? Instead of actually being very much parallel to the coast, Mumbai में कैसा है? The coast is like this. You have the like blocks of rocks here, but sometimes what happens is you don't put it parallel, you put it vertical. Okay, when it put it perpendicular to the coastline, then what happens? It breaks the waves. Okay, it breaks the waves. That is called grayons. Okay, so grayons is also one example. Or you can actually go for some soft engineering solutions like beach nourishment. Beach nourishment क्या होता है? Like instead of the what the river used to do, now humans will have to do it. मतलब क्या बोलता है? जब erosion होता है, okay, when there is erosion, you will actually restore with the sediments there. You will put the sediments. You will bring the sediments from inland and you will put it there. Okay, so that is there. But it is natural appearance तो मिल जाएगा, सब कुछ ठीक है, but it is a costly affair. Okay, it's a very costly affair. Okay, and second one, you can also look at like something like very much like going for mangrove reforestation and mangroves afforestation. Okay, and otherwise coral reef restoration or wetland conservation. All these can be some of the best examples to come up with the soft engineering techniques. Okay, so these are some things. Okay, and these are coastal management techniques to combat the hazard. But apart from that, I have also given some policies and planning approaches like integrated coastal zone managements, okay, where planning and managing the coastal areas is done from the government side, okay, and coastal regulation zone, like where you have the classification of the coastal areas into like different zones where you can actually sort of establish some activities, human activities, and where you cannot. Okay, these are done by the coastal regulation zone. Okay, and apart from that, using remote sensing satellites or GIS or some ground surveys to actually monitor along the coastal areas regarding the amount of erosion that is happening. Okay, apart from that, you can also establish some early warning systems where it can bring this issue to the notice of the coastal communities. Okay, and further you can also see that you can actually include the communities to participate in this, and where they can come up with their traditional knowledge to get rid of or like to overcome this particular issue, like probably some plantation drives or something like this. Okay, so these are some of the aspects that you can see. Okay, next, let us go to the next question. Any doubts here? Any doubts, guys? Mystery program, or there is one more, no? Amrit Darohar. Okay, उसमें भी है mangroves के बारे में. Okay. Yeah, we have the next question here. Explain the mechanism and occurrence of cloudburst. There are two things. One, two. In the context of Indian subcontinent. So you have to speak in the context of Indian subcontinent. And discuss two recent examples. These are the three things. Okay. These are the three things that is there in the part of this question. Okay. So now when you look at this here, firstly, what exactly is cloudburst? Okay, I told you in the beginning of this lecture somewhere, I told you that there is no universal definition accepted definition which says this is cloudburst. Okay, but IMD has come up with a definition which says, like, if for example in an area of 20 to 30 square kilometers, okay, in an area of 20 to 30 square kilometers, if the rainfall is 100 mm plus per hour, okay, if the rainfall is greater than 100 mm plus, then that is called cloudburst. Is this clear? That will be called cloudburst. So now when you look at this, how actually the cloudburst happens? Any region that will have moist laden winds, like for example in India, Himalayas and Western Ghats are the ones which actually receives major amount of the cloudburst. Okay, so what you can see is this monsoonal winds is moist laden winds. When they are coming towards these Himalayas or the Western Ghats, these are resulting in orographic uplifting. When they are uplifted, now these are monsoonal winds which are coming with greater velocity. Okay, when they are coming with greater velocity, striking the mountains, they will be lifted up. When they are lifted up, it's abrupt lift of the moist laden winds. When there is so much abrupt lift of the moist laden winds, let us say like this, the winds are coming, they are lifted up. Okay, when there is abrupt lift of the moist laden winds, what they tend to do is basically they tend to form cumulonimbus clouds. Okay, they tend to form the cumulonimbus clouds. There is supply, excess amount of supply of the moist laden winds. Okay, matlab moisture. So it is forming towering clouds. Okay, so what happens with this is basically you will see it condenses so much that it makes vertical clouds, and these convective currents will be will not stop unless the instability settle down. Okay, so now what happens is it has so much of water in the cloud, moisture in the cloud, and because of keeping lifted up to greater heights, it would have even converted into hailstones. Okay, so now what happens is this water accumulation, okay, and lack of horizontal expansion, okay, will concentrate entire tower of the water in a small area. Is that clear? And because the cloud is heavier now, it sheds out everything in very small duration. Okay, that's called cloudburst. Samajh mein aaya? Anybody did not understand? Clear with this? Okay, so that's basically called the cloudburst. Okay, so now what you can look at this cloudburst is, why do we call it as burst phenomena? Because it happens in a short duration of time, like you can see here. 1 hour, 100 mm plus, and in a small place. That's why it's called a cloudburst. Okay, so this is how the mechanism goes. Now, what is the occurrence? No, Andhi. You remember Andhi? Okay, so Andhi is basically a cloudburst. Okay, monsoons start with a cloudburst. Okay, so like that. So generally the cloudbursts are because of that intense low pressure or sudden updraft due to the orographic uplifting. Iski wajah se hota hai. Okay, yeah. Now, where does it occur in Indian subcontinent? As I told you, it will occur in the Himalayan region. Okay, it will occur in the Himalayan region because of the monsoonal winds interacting with the Himalayas. Okay, and uplifting, the same mechanism. Okay, otherwise you can see the same during the with the Western Ghats. Okay, the same phenomena, because what you can see is there is the monsoonal winds coming and strike along the Western Ghats and being lifted up. Clear? Then you have the monsoon season, like especially this is the time period when you actually witness this more of this cloudbursts. Is this clear? So, and generally to mention, like because it is asking for 2 examples, to mention the Amarnath Yatra cloudburst in Jammu and Kashmir that happened in 2022 is very strong example. Is that clear? So what you can see is, especially along this particular cave, I mean the cave shrine of Amarnath, okay. So there what happened is the winds came, and along the cave the winds were uplifted, resulting in the formation of cumulonimbus clouds. Okay, where you can see this resulted in like late afternoon or late evening, early evening extreme rainfall, where you can see this rainfall happened to sort of impact in such a way that it killed 16 people. Okay, there were 16 fatalities, and also a dozen of them were actually initially went missing, but later on with the efforts of the disaster response teams, okay, they were identified. Okay, so next, if you look at this further, what you can see is like the pilgrimage was hard hit. Okay, it was very hard hit, and also you can see several wo langar laga tha na basically. So along the valley region they put this langar and all those were washed out. Okay, that is what happened. That was the intensity there. Second example is Himachal Pradesh cloudburst that occurred between July and August 2023. Okay, here the districts of Kullu, Mandi, Shimla, Solan and Chamba, okay, these districts were very much hit because there were significant amount of this monsoonal winds interacting with the Himalayan topography all along the July and August season. It resulted in significant formation of the clouds, cumulonimbus, and frequent cloudbursts in that region. Okay, so what you can see is almost 400 people were killed by the end of monsoon season that year, okay, because of this cloudbursts. Here, that's when the state happened to declare it as the state disaster, and they implemented several other steps that can be implemented according to the state disaster. Okay, when you regulate a particular disaster, when you actually declare a particular disaster as a state disaster, then you can actually utilize the state disaster response fund for any of the steps that is related to disaster management. Okay, this is something that you need to know. Is this clear? Shall we go to the next question? Any doubts? Yeah, sure. Any doubts? Anybody? Here, this question, describe the various causes and effects of landslides. So, causes, effects of landslides. Mention the important components of national landslide risk management. Okay, here there are three questions. First one is causes, second one is effects, and the third one is national landslide risk management strategy. Is this clear? So, when you look at landslide, how do you define landslide? Anyone? So, anyone define landslides? No idea? Sudden fall of the... first of all ringing, and on top of it you are answering it. So, chalo, any which ways. Yeah, it is basically the downslope movement of earth debris under the influence of gravity, right? Downslope movement of earth debris under the influence of gravity. Matlab any earth material that is along the slopes, under the influence of gravity it will flow down. Is that clear? So that is basically called the landslides. It can be of several types. It can be as slow as the soil creep, or it can be as fast as the landslides, rockfall, or avalanche, or solifluction, mud flow, all these. Is this clear? Now, when you look at this, causes of landslides, it can be several causes. Like firstly, geological factors. It can be something like the weak materials along the slope. Okay, the weak materials along the slope can be pushing this unconsolidated materials down the slope. Or it can be the discontinuities, like for example, there are cracks, joints, faults, or something like this. Because of that also it can happen. And otherwise it can be also because of the slope angle. Steeper the mountain, the chances of landslide is higher, okay, than the gradual slopes. And apart from that, if there is stratification of the rocks, like different types of layers in the material of the rocks, where it is not well consolidated, then that can also result in it. Is this clear? So these are the geological factors. You can also have hydrological factors, okay, where you can see the hydrological factors like heavy rainfall that will actually lubricate the surface of the these mountains, and it will actually sort of destabilize and bring the material down. Is this clear? And I told you there can be multiple material in the layers. Like for example, let us say the subsurface layer is clayey. when the subsurface layer is clayey, then what happens? Like clayey soil will be like more slippery when it gets saturated with water. Then it will move down the earth material. Is this clear? So something like this, and it can also, it is not always the rainfall that will be responsible for this. It can also be the glacial melt. Okay, it can also be the glacial melt. So apart from this, you can see sometimes if the groundwater fluctuation happens, like if there is rise in the groundwater, that can also lubricate the subsurface layer and it can also move the particles down. And apart from that, like you can also see if there is changes in the flow of the river, right, then the water can lubricate the slopes and it can also result in landslides. Is this clear? And apart from this, seismic activity can also result in landslides. Like for example, there are some rock fragments on the slopes, and if there is earthquake, then these rock fragments will, like, you know, sort of roll down. That is called rockfall. Okay, the same thing can happen with volcanism also. Volcanism, violent blast of the or eruption of the volcanism can actually result in shaking of the region. The ground shaking results in like the destabilized region to like pass the earth material down the slope. Okay, so these things can be seen. Okay, and further, these are natural causes. There can be even anthropogenic causes. Like what are anthropogenic causes? Like for example, you can see construction of roads, tunnels and dams. Okay, all these things will be actually, like if the engineering infrastructure is constructed in such a way without providing sufficient support, then the slopes are left steep, then it will result in landslides. Is that clear? And apart from that, you can also look at the deforestation, which is a bigger cause. Okay, from the day of Chipko movement till today, that is the biggest cause of landslides, deforestation. And also mining and quarrying. Mining and quarrying में क्या करते हैं? We तो actually destabilize the slopes, correct? Mining and quarrying is generally the destabilization of the slopes. So when the destabilization of the slopes occur, then it can, some rainfall, some other trigger can actually roll down the earth material. And further, you can also see if there are some, like, you know, urbanization that is occurring along the slopes. What happens is the water leakage or sewage, like, you know, what is that, like for example, water pipes or septic tanks or like irrigation system का जो भी है वो पानी inefficient way में dispose हो रहा है, then it passes through the slopes. When it is passing through the slopes, then that is also sort of lubricating the surface. Okay, so that ways also that can pass down the earth material through the downslope. Is this clear? So these are some of the causes. And what can be the effects? What will happen when there is landslide? Of course, that is one thing. Loss of life, loss of property. Okay, and there is mass scale of vegetation or something. If there is remnant anything that is falling down. Okay, and also you can speak about agricultural loss. Yes or no? Agricultural loss, tourism impact, and increased cost of like, you know, bringing back to normalcy. Is this clear? Bringing back to normalcy, and habitat destruction in terms of environmental aspects. And also you can see these debris, if you recall that Himalayan crisis video, if you have seen, I have told you there was an earthquake that led to landslide. The debris blocked the river Brahmaputra in Assam in 1950. Okay, when it blocked the river, matlab debris can actually block the rivers. So landslides can block the river flow. Is this clear? They can block the river flow and that can result in flooding also. Is this clear? And further you can also see there is sedimentation in the water because of the landslides that degrades the quality of water. Is this right? That will also degrade the quality of the water. And further, this will always have a psychological impact on the people who experience this disaster. Right? So, for example, the psychological trauma because of the loss of near ones or dear ones, or otherwise it can also be something like the displacement, forced displacement of people, loss of property, ancestral property, all these things will be there. Is this clear? These are some of the impacts that you can see. Further, you can see that National Landslide Risk Management, here it says we should actually develop something called as the user-friendly landslide hazard zonation maps. where the places are highly, like what do you say, highly susceptible to the disaster, and moderately susceptible and low susceptibility. Okay, and here you should also make sure there should be sufficient amount of the instruments like the pore pressure sensors or inclinometers or rain gauge systems, and the ones that can also actually assess the amount of humidity, wind speed, all these things should be there. So when there is sufficiently, this makes the early warning system. When there is sufficient such devices, one can actually identify the possibility of formation of a cloud that is like the cumulonimbus and result in such a sort of rainfall. Then before even that, you can actually evacuate the people. Is this clear? So this is one more thing. Also, you should make the ones who survive and who thrive in this particular high vulnerability zones, you should actually make them get aware of the situation and that identify the warning signs and risk and all those and act proactively. So that is nothing but educating and awareness. Is this clear? So that is one more thing that can be seen. And moreover, like there should be some structural and non-structural measures taken in order to make stabilization and mitigation of the landslides. Okay, stabilization of the slopes and mitigation of the landslides. How would you do? Like for example, when I say structural measures, when you construct the roads, when you construct something like man-made structures, you also stabilize the slope, where in case of any rockfall or anything, you have an iron mesh that will collect. Probably if you have traveled along the Himalayas, you can see some mesh that is put along the mountain walls. That is actually to collect the debris, rather than it blocking the roads and like rolling down the roads and all those. Okay, or such things can be seen. Otherwise, you can also, if there are any habitations and all, make some subsurface proper drainage flow, so that that is not interacting with the soil and destabilizing the slope. That is also a structural measure. And when you look at the non-structural measures, here it refers to something like afforestation drives. Okay, go for more plantations, more forestations. Okay, and like you can also like go for vegetation planting or contour trenching. Like contour trenching is like randomly you will actually make small trenches through which the water can flow down. Is this clear? So something like this. These are something that can actually stabilize the slopes and result in lesser frequency of landslides. Is this clear? Okay, and further, like there are several institutional and legal frameworks also that is providing support to this. Like for example, promoting research and development, okay, in the studies and how to mitigate it and all those. And there is NDMA guidelines for it, like the ones which we are looking at. Otherwise, the remote sensing is happening, like ISRO is working on this part to identify the vulnerable zones. All these things are there. Is this clear? So this is something that you can know about this particular question. Is this clear? So let's do one thing. I'll try to cover till the 10th question. Last two questions I'll cover, then I'll let you go. We'll try to have second session where we'll cover the remaining of it. Okay? Yeah. Is that okay? 5 o'clock. Okay. So you want me to leave now or? Okay, what about others? You have the class? How many of you have class? Okay. Okay. Others can sit? No problem. We'll handle 2 more questions and remaining will have a second part. Okay? Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. So now you can look at this question here. Discuss the vulnerability of India to earthquakes related hazards. Give examples including the salient features of major disasters caused by earthquakes in different parts of India during the last 3 decades. Okay. Here what is it asking for? Like you have to discuss about the vulnerability of India to earthquakes and related hazards. Is that clear? like I gave you the example of the 1950 earthquake in Assam. 1950 earthquake in Assam resulted in landslides. Landslides resulted in blocking the, the river flow of Brahmaputra. That resulted in flooding. So like that it is asking. Is this clear? And apart from this, so they're asking for some examples from last 3 decades. So to start with here, you can see 59-60% of India is actually very much vulnerable to the earthquakes. 59 to 60% of India is vulnerable to earthquakes. Now, when you look at this, we also have the classification of the earthquake zones, like zone 5 being extremely vulnerable, and zone 2, zone 5, 4, 3 and 2. 2 is least vulnerable. Is that clear? So, like in terms of intensity, in terms of intensity it is. Now, when you look at this, there are certain reasons for India to be more vulnerable to earthquakes and related disasters. Okay, like for example, the first one is the tectonic activities. You know, Indian plate is subducting below the Eurasian plate, so there is good amount of concentration of the seismic energy that will actually, when released, is the resulting in earthquakes. Okay, and apart from that, you can see India is also experiencing not just the intraplate boundary earthquakes, but interplate earthquakes also. Intraplate earthquakes. Okay, see, what I am trying to tell you is not just that India is receiving interplate boundary earthquakes, but intraplate also. Like, for example, the Bhuj earthquake, the Latur earthquake. Okay, so like the Bhuj earthquake and Latur earthquake are the best examples where even there is a lot of debate despite these many years of this earthquake happened. Since it happened, there is lot of debate regarding what exactly is the reason behind the earthquake. Okay, some people say, some scholars say that Bhuj earthquake may be because of some ancient like tectonic boundaries getting active again. Is that clear? But we never know. Okay, so that is something. So what you can see apart from this, India is highly populated and densely populated, especially along the earthquake zonation region, matlab high intensity earthquake zonation region. Okay, like the Indo-Gangetic Brahmaputra plains is zone 5 and zone 4. Is that clear? Like when it is zone 5 and zone 4, that means it is highly intense, intensity is higher in this region. Okay, and further you can see the construction practices that we follow is very much unscientific. That actually has resulted in not having disaster resilient buildings, but more vulnerable buildings. Is this clear? Like if you recall, I just told you a while ago that the state of Uttarakhand, the state, the places like Nainital, Mussoorie in that Uttarakhand Himachal region has actually the infrastructure which cannot be utilized after an earthquake. Itna vulnerable infrastructure. Is that clear? So that is something you can see that can actually sort of exaggerate the consequences of it. Further, you can also see every time there is an earthquake, the possibility of the landslides is higher. Is that clear? Because the itna jada human imprint to laga diya hum udhar. Okay, like deforestation, tourism, all these things have destabilized the slopes. Is this clear? So this is something that you can look at. So these factors are the ones that you need to mention with respect to vulnerability of India towards the earthquakes. Now, apart from that, you need to look at some examples. The first example, in October 20, 1991, okay, probably even before many of you have been born, right? I mean, where many of you were like probably not there. So in October 20, 1991, there was this Uttarkashi earthquake. The magnitude was 6.6 on Richter scale, and you can see this resulted in the focus was also very shallow depth. It was like just 12 kilometers below. It is a shallow depth, and it resulted in close to 780 to 2000 fatalities. Okay, around 2000 people, close to 1000 to 2000 people died. Is this clear? And literally there were 20,000 houses fully destroyed and 75,000 were partially damaged. Is this clear? So the region is very vulnerable because there is good amount of man-made impact as well as the tectonic activity that is very strong there. Correct? So these are some things that you can see. Further, Latur earthquake. When you look at Latur earthquake, here September 30, 1993, okay, this Latur earthquake happened. See, Latur earthquake, Latur is in Maharashtra. It is believed that peninsular India is more stable in terms of the seismic and other endogenic activities. But still, the earthquake that occurred was 6.4 magnitude. The earthquake that occurred was almost 6.4 magnitude, and it was very shallow depth of the focus, just 10 kilometers from the surface. So now it resulted in close to 10,000 people dead and almost 30,000 people injured. Latur earthquake. So now the question comes, why? When the question comes why did the earthquake happen? Still we are debating on it, because there is no active plate boundary in that region. It's an intra-plate earthquake. Is that clear? And apart from this, you can see Chamoli earthquake that occurred on March 29, 1999. This is in Uttarakhand. Okay, here it was 6.6 Richter scale, and you can see this impacted almost 2,000 villages around that region. Okay, the Chamoli and Rudraprayag districts were badly hit. Is this clear? Next, apart from this, you can also look at the Bhuj earthquake, which is one of the most deadliest earthquake in the history of India. Okay, this occurred on Jan 26, 2001. It was very powerful earthquake, but it is an intra-plate earthquake. It's not along the boundary. It's not along the plate tectonic boundary. Is that clear? So, roughly 20,000 people died. 20,000 people died, and 1,67,000 people were injured. And you can see 95% of the buildings in Bhuj were destroyed. And you can see almost 890 villages around this region were gone. And so this is what you can see. And it also resulted in liquefaction, mud flow in that region, like the landslide. It is a type of a landslide. Mud flow means when the mud is more in the content and water gets saturated with it and flows down. That is what happens. Okay. So these things were seen. And similarly, we had Kashmir earthquake on October 8, 2005. Iska magnitude tha 7.6. Okay. And close to 1,300 people had died out of this. And there was Nepal earthquake in 2015, April 25. That was also very deadly because its impact was seen in India also. Bihar, Uttar Pradesh happened to see significant damage to the buildings. Okay. And also you can see there were secondary hazards, especially in Sikkim and Uttarakhand, where you must have observed a severe landslides occurring in that region. Is this clear? So these are some of the examples you can mention here. Is this clear? So this is something that you could have mentioned. And yeah. Okay, so let's wind it up here, and let's have one more session probably tomorrow. Okay, in that session I'll complete the remaining parts. Okay, yeah, thank you. I'll check with it. It will be announced any which ways. Yeah, okay, thank you.